Chapter 459, The Enraged Woman. It has been ages since we met a new one, so welcome aboard at Bon Bob to this ride. Oh, motivation. Double chapter everyone. Part 1. Reaper's March is a region connecting the jungles of northeastern Valenwood with the rolling plains of northwestern Elsewhere. The northwestern woodlands are called simply the Northern Woods, which give way to Jodewood in the south. Eastern Reaper's March is called Dawnmead. The Strid River forms its northern border, separating it from western Cyrodiil. It is home to the cities of Arinthia, Ralka, and Dune, as well as some smaller settlements and Aliad ruins. The walking city Falinesti has been known to spend the autumn in the northern woods west of Ralka. The march has a unique mixture of Bosmeri and Khajiit culture, along with some imperial influence. The cinch tigers native to the area are believed by the locals to have mystical alchemical properties. Despite the dry conditions of Reaper's March, the Khajiit have managed to farm and harvest moon sugar in the area for generations through extensive irrigation projects. While bandits and skooma smuggling are common, Daedra worship is minimal. Khajiit temples in the region are noted for their awe-inspiring beauty, though there are many other monuments and grand structures that are decayed and ruined. The team traveled through northern Anakina for a couple of days until they reached the border fort of Sphinxmoth, north to the city of Dune. There, the expert smuggler Ilvirios Ulriric and his trusty Saint-Che companion Chaz have made a few rounds of recon before heading to the secret roads. These secret roads spanned across the low savanna area to the high savanna forest and the rocky badlands until the group was officially in Reaper's March. The only shortcoming of using unused roads is the low level of security that sometimes does not exist. Still, John mastered the art of aiming the staff out of the carriage's window, shoot a few spells, and call it a day. "This man Krylin knows his magic," Chaz commented. "Believe me, you haven't seen him when he gets excited, and pray you won't," Mirren said. "But they will." But as the team reached the official roads, the security was mostly lax and no one stopped them for inspection. "Why is that?" John asked them. "It seems many men were pulled back by the Thalmor to handle a situation in the west." "Where is your compass pointing again?" Ilvirios said. "The west," John replied. "Great. Yes, be positive." John returned to the parked carriage where Zara and Miranda were eating dinner. "Looks like we are heading towards some trouble," John said. "Eat. Can't face trouble on an empty stomach." Miranda passed a bowl of rice to him. The Khajiit rice was famed for its long grain, the opportunity that John took to revive his obsession with his past life's food and some roasted mutton. It was to die for. "Tell Zara about what to do," Moon Bishop Zara asked. "Regarding?" "The man we fought, Isha's brother." John sighed and stopped what he was doing. "I have a labor I must do, but I also have a friend who is looking for answers. I hope that the answers she wants can give me leeway in not putting down her blood relative," he said. "If all came to the worst, what should be done? I am not entirely sure what we are facing at the moment. Zane is out there aiming for something. We don't know if his mental state was affected by some sort of hypnosis to attack his sister, but I am sure if I have a sister, which I do, I would never allow anything in the world to so much get the faintest thought of harming her." John revealed his anger towards Zane if what he did was out of real hostility, because this means that a mortal clash will be the end of it between the two. "What about what Isha thinks?" "I will keep things go her way and hope it all works out. If she happens to screw up, I'll protect her and do things the way I see fit. She won't hate me by the end of things," John said. "That's more diplomatic than the usual you," Miranda said. "I am not a bullheaded fool, you know. No offense, Jax." Jax was speechless. "But Zara thinks that leaving her to screw up will make things worse and endanger someone. I know Isha is emotional right now, but she is not a fool." John ended the conversation right here. No matter what others think, Isha is apparently the key to this last labor. What John was worried about was the interference of Clavicus Vile and the other Daedra with him, as well as Manamarco, the king of worms. The Chim and the Daedra may find it hard to act in the mortal world, but Clavicus Vile has his dog Barbas, the hound of Clavicus Vile. He is a shape-shifting Daedra, although he most commonly takes on the form of a dog or Scoffin. Barbas acts as a repository for around half of Vile's power, though behaves as his loyal servant rather than equal, often pining for his approval to little avail. For this reason, John was keeping Nefertiti awake most of the time to keep an eye on any supernatural entity that gets close. And on that routine, they arrived at Dune. Dune is one of the 8 major cities in the province of Elsewhere, serving as the largest Khajiit settlement in the borderlands of Reaper's March. It is a prominent merchant town with a bustling crowd of caravans and herders. It is a city of artistry, with painted pavilions and statues that have intricate carvings of gold, red, and black. Dune is also known for the abundance of tea parlors. It was also one of the original 16 kingdoms of Elsewhere, known for its moon sages and scholars. As a large metropolis built on the hills that lead into the rest of Anakhina, Dune is heavily fortified, but not without its artistic attributes. The high walls and battlements of Dune are ornate, with crescent moons adorned across the walls. But despite this, Dune's walls are made out of wood, with some buildings falling into disrepair. But regardless, Dune continues to stand. The doors in Dune are decorative. The streets and thoroughfare have painted pavilions and decorative statues. They are also very clean for what it is, dung-free, but with constant traffic from herders. Once the group entered Dune, they were heavily inspected by the guards and a Thalmor officer. John morphed to become Jonia the Red Khajiit, and the rest blended in the way they always do. Zara took Isha to visit the Temple of Two Moon Dances to acquire information about any unnatural activity or a sighting of a man wearing a troll skull on his head, while Miran and Miranda went to ask in the Thieves' Guild nearby. John was left with Ilvirios and told not to cause a scene. As if, John walked dissatisfied in the merchant district looking for new commodities to take notes off, business to learn from, or any interesting Khajiit spices. While in the midst of wasting money, he stopped in front of a certain building as something caught his attention. "So you found this place, Krylin? It is said that only the bravest of the brave dare to enter this establishment," Ilvirios said from behind. John's face reacted to the D word, but he kept it in. "I can understand why," he said. "Basically, this place is a brothel. The only thing that can make a brothel more special than another is the quality, but this one had the taste. An orc brothel. Imagine a horde of beautiful orc girls waiting to embrace you in there," Ilvirios said. "Is there such a thing as a beautiful orc?" John refuted. "You won't know until you try. I suggest that girl over there." Ilvirios pointed at one. "Oh, dear Lord. Imagine getting a fellatio from an orc mouth. Akinshin won't feel kimochi at all." John said so and walked away. "What is he saying?" Ilvirios asked Chaz. Chaz thought for a while. He must be speaking the language of gods. Part 2. After fooling around in Dune, the group met at the inn they are staying in. They were to brief each other of their findings. The temple had information about some trouble on the other side of the borders. The Dominion soldiers refused to disclose any information or ask for help from the locals, so there isn't much to know. Zara said, "Did you guys know that there is an orc brothel around the corner?" John. "We didn't find a lot from the guild either, but here is a map for the new areas that are being watched. Looks like we need to be more careful when we cross to Valenwood." Miran spread a map on the table. I was like, "Nah, how can I do it with an orc girl? Look at their teeth. What makes you so sure they don't have some of those down there as well? You know, like that horror movie, John." After the temple, Zara went to someplace where the Dominion soldiers hang out and spoke to Khajiit soldier. They said there were orders to keep the borders tight. Zara remarked as she agreed with Miran's map. "But man, who would know orcs girls can be so tight and so stretchy? Despite their looks, which is not too bad after a heavy drink, you can have a really good chat, John. So, we are talking about walking into a place where we don't know much, right? I don't like it, but we can just blend in or try to pass from Jodwood." Miran adjusted the plan. "So I met that girl calling herself Candace. Pfft, an orc with such a name? I know it's fake. I mean, she can be called Homromalak Gaggern for all I care about, John." And here came the straw that broke the camel's back. "Shut up, John." Miran. "We're trying to think here." Isha. "John, not good." Miranda. Can we just figure out what is happening on the other side of the borders now then hear your story later? Zara? Oh, you mean the strange fire outbreak in Vindusk Village? John said. Hmm? The strange Dominion army movements? There was a big fight in a village called Vindusk and escalated to a big fire. There were traces for the fight moving towards Malabal Tor. John said casually. The four paused for a second, realizing what just happened. How do you know about any of that? Mirren asked. That orc girl Homromalak told me. Let's just call her Candace for short. John said, I also bought some food on the way back. You really need to try this sugarcane juice when it is fresh and frosty. Tastes like heaven. Hey, focus. How did that hooker know all that? Isha asked. Well, you guys went to your contacts in temples and guilds. I did what I do. Information hunting from brothels? Duh. It is the best place to do so. All brothel owners are information brokers under the table. I do the same since I have my business in Skyrim. You have a brothel in Skyrim? Mirren questioned. Not a brothel, a bathhouse. Brothels are for you, Southerners. A bathhouse is an honest work. We don't put girls on display like how things go down here. John refuted. Wow, I am having a whole new view of you now. Isha said. I think we should focus on what we know now, guys. John said, acting all serious. You know what? Let's keep the planning to our information expert over here, Mirren said and went away. Yes, Zara thinks so too, and so did the rest. Seriously? Days passed since the group departed from Dune heading towards the west. The Eye of the Moon Beast, amulets John was carrying, still pointed to the west every night. The team headed to Ralka, a city on the border to the eastern bank of the Crescent River. Once they passed it by taking a smuggling ferry, the group was officially in Valenwood. Hey, John. Yes, Isha. That attack we discussed in that Vindusk village. Isn't it possible that Zane is behind it? We have already talked about that. It was an attack from Colovian marauders. Are you sure? What makes you so doubtful? Look, I know how military organizations act and react. If it is just a raid, they will fortify every place that they think marauders shall attack, not pull the troops from everywhere and pretend there is a serious bandit hunt. Meaning? Armies won't pull back like this unless the problem is bigger than what they announced. Maybe it is Zane, or maybe not. Just saying. Good thinking. John paused for a while and started thinking. Colovian marauders are possible in some cases, like if there is a famine in Colovia, the western half of Cyrodiil. But that is not the case. There is a good flow of trade and the empire is economically stable this year. Other cases for marauders from Cyrodiil would be an imperial tactic. A war between the Empire and the Dominion is always possible, so the intelligence agencies like to play cold while the armies disguise as bandits and exhaust the other armies in their land. John was familiar with these underhanded tactics, but he was a bit of a dolt regarding large armies. Fine, we will investigate Vindusk. Thank you. But the real situation was much worse than what they thought. They reached the outskirts of Vindusk village a couple of days later, then all decided to wear as Dominion soldiers. John had a lot of Dominion armor lying around. Zara stayed with Jax at some distance to not cause a political issue if she was discovered, while John, Isha, Mirren, Miranda, and Ilvirios started scouting outside the village. This was the first ever Bossmare settlement John walks across. It was somewhat of a magical place, the closest thing to relate to the elves from John's past world fantasies. In the middle of the village, there was a great grot oak tree that is a distinctive feature to all Bossmare settlements. The houses of the Bossmare were hollow and sort of the grot oak known as the pods. The grot oaks themselves are massive, ambulatory trees native to Valenwood. The Bossmare are known to build entire cities in the branches of these great trees. In their mighty boughs, Bossmare live alongside the ape-like Imga in a mobile ecosystem, coaxing the living wood into pathways winding around hide structures nestled in hollows. The Bossmare never used wood in the way other races did. According to the Green Pact, Bossmare are not to eat anything made from plant life, but only eat meat. When enemies are defeated, their flesh must be eaten, not left to rot. This and many other things made a unique image to the Bossmare and their civilization. As John took his fair share of looking around from afar, it was time to infiltrate and take action. The village was calm and had no villagers walking around. This meant there was a curfew of a sort. There were also some patrols from the Dominion soldiers, so John and the group acted like some soldiers on a leave. The only place where they found activity was in the central grotto. The tree that reached almost 50 meters in height housed many corpses of various origins. They were preserved with magic, not to rot, and were being investigated. It was clear that many of them were not warriors or locals, but some were Nords, Khajiit and Dumair, which raised a lot of questions. John and his group approached the area and kept looking from afar while pretending to be in a conversation. Still, there was that strange thing that started to develop. "Hey, I don't feel good," Ilvirios said. "What's wrong?" John asked. "Don't know. Something doesn't feel right. A lot of hate just possessed me all of a sudden." Hate? It was unclear whether the word hate meant anything in particular, but it may be because of some aura or any influence unnatural none knew about. Human. Nefertiti. Anything strain. There is someone strong nearby. How strong? Nurina strong. John paused for a second, then looked around worriedly. Now that he thinks about it, the city guards are moving in designated spots and looking for strange happenings. If that's the case, then we should get out of here, he said. Why? We are out of place. Those dead bodies are not Colovian raiders. The town is shut tight. They are looking for someone they don't. That's why they are keeping the civilians in place. John suggested a retreat, but things weren't willing to go smoothly. As soon as the group moved away from the grotto, Ilvirios started sweating heavily. What is wrong? John asked. Not good. It is not natural, Ilvirios said. What is it? John asked, but he was cut. Incoming. Nefertiti warned him, and in a split of a second, John reacted. He turned around and caught a very powerful, lightning bolt spell with his bare hands. The magic dissipated in a cloud of electrical charges around John as he closed his hand to crush its energy. Looking towards the central tree, John spotted a woman in a green dress walking closer. If I remember correctly, my orders were not to include Bosmere soldiers in this dispatch. Now that there is this person blocking my magic like that, I guess I got some results after all. Her expressions were visible with rage, and her aura was natural rather than a trained one, much like the beast aura of werewolves. If John had to call it a name, it is more of a primal nature aura. Hey, we don't want any trouble, John spoke. Silence. The woman wasn't amused by John's reply and sent a stronger spell. John circulated his magicka to contain the spell and dispel it without making too much sound. You are skilled, the woman said as she kept approaching. Am I allowed to speak? He asked. Oh, you will speak. She shot another spell, but John hurriedly handled it. Sorry about whatever is going on, but can we clear the misunderstanding? John said while signaling his group to retreat while supporting the exhausted-looking Ilvirios. Sneaking to this place disguised only means one thing, she said as she kept approaching. John felt the suffocating amount of magicka this woman had as it manifested through her rage and hatred. She was a beautiful Bosmere lady that was most likely a noble. She wasn't a Thalmor, but rather an orthodox green-packed Bosmere from her clothing. Speaking of which, her dress was very revealing now that she got closer, as her cleavage was visible to her torso, and most of her arms and back were exposed as well. John couldn't put his hand on her identity, but he decided to distract her while the others retreat. So, you've seen through my disguise. I congratulate you, John said as he took off his Dominion helm, exposing the Altmare face he uses. He then transformed with lust into an Imperial. The woman paused as she didn't expect to see this one coming. Mimic spell is not very unstable and easy to expose. This one wasn't even anticipated. The woman now had some doubts regarding what she is up against. John intentionally used lust to cause this confusion. So, what was that thing about a Colovian raid? He asked. It what? The woman frowned. I mean the story that is being covered. Oh, that? The woman felt the urge to smack the one who came up with the Colovian raid idea for confusing her like that. Was the attack you're doing Imperial? She asked. My doing? Hardly. I am just here on a manhunt. John smirked while saying so. Insolent! The woman shouted and cast an even stronger spell. John had to take pride out to stop this one, but the spell caused a loud sound that alerted all the Dominion soldiers nearby. They all flooded towards John's location and blocked every route. Shit. The others were nervous from the number of soldiers around, but John kept a calm attitude. Seeing you this angry means something bad happened, lady. Should we start once again, but right this time? Nice to meet you. My name is Krylin, a member of the Sith. John stood straight and offered a slight now while going on with his usual bluff. The Sith? Is that from the Empire? She asked. That's a tricky question. John paused to think about it. Technically yes, but also no. Krylin, let's just get rid of them, Isha said while aiming her spear at the woman. You. The woman evoked a strong spell towards Isha. Wait. Let's be rational here, lady. This girl is a bit of a rogue one. John jumped in between to ease the tension. Hey, Isha didn't like being called rogue. Calm down now. Let me handle this situation. Solo, he said and turned to the woman. Lady, please let's handle this peacefully. No one can handle the revenge of the Sith. The woman was provoked, but she wanted answers. What is the Empire doing here? She asked. We're not really the Empire. Was it revenge for last year's incident? Well, in that case, the Empire strikes back. So it is you Imperial bastards who are behind this. There is no hope for you. There is always a new hope. John's lips were twitching as he kept spamming movie titles whenever he talks. The woman noticed him and became enraged. The magicka around her moved as Age shouted with rage. Don't bluff with me. What are you after? A guy wearing a troll skull called Zane, but I prefer to call him the Phantom Menace. Isha was taken aback, but just John couldn't help it and leaked a laugh. Still, mentioning the troll skull was exceptionally effective. The woman paused her actions for a second, while staring at John with wide eyes, then all of a sudden, her face twisted in a frightening glare. I knew it. You are with him. The woman was enraged beyond sense, seemingly willing to pulverize over John. On the other hand, he turned around and looked at Isha. So you were correct, the trouble here is related to him. Just get out of here. The rest shouted at him. Nefertiti. John called for Nefertiti and many shadows moved on the ground. Several Shadow Hawk Atranax appeared from the ground and carried a member of the group each. But the madly enraged boss mare woman wasn't willing to let them go. You won't get away, she shouted, and her voice echoed far and wide. An unnatural amount of magicka glowed around her as she took up to the sky just by magic. Well, that's what I call The Force Awakens. Chapter 460, The Crazy Green Lady Bitch. Double Chapter, Daily Plus Monthly Extra, Part 1. In the night sky, John rose up to a certain level on the Shadow Hawk Atranac, looking down on the bossmare woman who was levitating towards him. Levitation is a slow magic compared to the flying ability of a Hawk Atranac. It's solely dependent on energy and no physics, so John had an idea to play the woman in the air until she runs out of energy, then smite her down to capture her. Even if she is as strong as Nurina, it is still a matter of debate regarding how skillful and resourceful a mage can be. A mage from the students of Divaith FYR can't be disadvantaged in the field of skill by anyone in the general magic community after all. But John overlooked one small detail. He is not the only one with an arsenal of powers and blessings, especially when it comes to that particular woman. She, who was levitating in an aura of green magicka, realized her disadvantage midair, but it was only a matter of ability. Come to me, the woman shouted, and her voice echoed in the sky. John snorted and aimed his staff at her, preparing his best lightning spell to chip off her magicka as much as he can. Evoke, overcharge, and shoot. The super lightning bolt broke through the air between John and that woman, aiming to devastate her magicka, but in a second, a shade moved in great speed and took the woman away from harm. Whoa! John tried to keep up with his eyes and used the night vision spell, but whatever that is was too fast to catch. In a matter of a second, that creature turned in the air and flew towards John with its claws aiming at John's shadow hawk Atronak. Move! John used every strand of his power to evade, but the woman on the back of that creature used her staff to hit the Atronak and dispel it by force, leaving John no foothold in the air. Her speed was too hard for John to react to. She made a turn in the air, and her creature kept hovering midair looking at the prey that was falling, or the prey that was supposed to fall. John was still hovering midair too. So, a griffin. John identified the creature right away. A vulture griffin from the regular brown-feathered species that is much larger than Alina's Lochther. The boss mare woman tried to detect what method was John using to keep up midair and noticed that he was just floating normally. It was his turn to use the levitate spell. You are really skilled, criminal. Shame on you. You really are not willing to listen, don't you, lady? John replied with a tired face. John was not falling for now, but in front of that griffin, he is lacking in all aspects of flight. Maintaining a spell with a hand and fighting with another is really inconvenient, and armor was still that of a Dominion officer, so he had to revert to his own gear. Greed jumped off the cube, and inside it was all of John's stuff. It enveloped John in one go and took his shape. From the outside, the scene looked grotesque, and the woman decided to be careful, but later, the Dominion armor on John was spat out through greed, and the shadow ether took the shape of a cloak who was now geared up in full ebony. The woman felt restless and regretted letting John going in his armor, but still had the upper advantage. The man in ebony is still levitating, and she had the griffin. Phoebe, go! She rallied her griffin, and it rushed towards John with its 4 limbs to shred him apart. Its claws were reinforced with elven metal and seemed vicious and threatening. Still, John took a step to the side midair. The woman adjusted her griffin and focused on John, once again studying his unnatural movement. Truth, Ozadal's boots of the apostle were at play here. John kept the smug face as he saw the woman trying to see through his secrets. Again. The woman didn't give up and went after John once again with the griffin. John took a few steps away again, but the woman was after him with her staff, shooting close-ranged flame magic blasts. John covered himself with a quadrant ward and completely negated her attacks. He then started to shoot some of his own back, but the griffin was simply way too fast. Okay, I am bored. His alarm spell was advanced enough to warn him from attacks, so no matter what speed he used, it was easy to evade. Currently, the two were about 60 meters above the ground. John looked up, then started to fly upward. The woman was also done being careful, as John wasn't revealing any hidden abilities, so she went forward with a slow, directly assault, shooting a ton of magic at him. John, who was being attacked from behind, stopped his flight and fell downward toward the griffin. The griffin was viciously trying to shred John again, but at the 0 distance, John skillfully evaded. Still, Nefertiti. From the other side to the direction John was evading from, Nefertiti jumped out of greed in a werewolf form and slashed towards the woman. Screech/growl. It happened way too fast, but when Nefertiti attacked, the griffin noticed her and rotated to protect the woman, taking the attack under its wing. John hurriedly reacted and attached the woman who was exposed to him, but the griffin also took the attack. Nefertiti found her way inside greed, and the woman started to circle away from John to lessen the pressure on her griffin, but something she didn't anticipate happened. Looking back to where John was, he wasn't there. She didn't feel any teleportation, but when she looked behind her, she found him extending 2 chains from his gauntlets, attaching them to the hind legs of the griffin and skating on the air behind her. This thing is really fun. Go faster. Insolent. Despite him being weaker than her, he was annoying and seemed as if he had a spell for every situation. But soon, the man actives his aura, which was blood red to the max. The woman had a bad feeling, especially when John changed his position. John accepted every bit of his power in Ozadal's boots of the apostle and Ozadal's evil fists. The griffin started to slow down significantly. Damn it. Knowing that her partner griffin is in danger, The woman turned around and shot a barrage of magic towards John, but he was ready for that. He only needed her not to be looking ahead. Flash. Out of nowhere, a staff was floating not too far away from the griffin. It shot an overcharged chain lightning that lit up the sky. It was too late to react as the spell had already landed. Asterisk Gra. Star. Phoebe. Despite being hit by the chain together, the woman could ignore the damage, but the griffin wasn't that strong. Its power fell drastically and started losing attitude. Curse you. The woman was full of hate as she cursed at John. She had to focus on protecting herself and help the griffin at the same time. John's dirty plan was to target the griffin from the beginning and make the woman distracted between defending herself and her griffin and attacking back. But she had another thing in mind. She put both hands on the griffin and poured an unimaginable amount of energy. John didn't know the magic she is using, but he could only think of one use to that crazy amount of energy. She was over-energizing her griffin. You crazy psycho. He sent one of the chains to pick, Pride, that was blending in the dark sky to ambush the griffin and caught it, but before he could do anything, the griffin was already on steroids. Asterisk Screech. Star. Shit. It flapped its wings as strong as it could and unleashed itself at a frightening speed. Yo. You moth. Fuck. Cur. John was like a hanging banner behind an airplane that spews curses whenever it went. John. Hell meh. We're coming to you. Miranda reached to him by telepathy, but the boss mare woman decided to land down towards the forest nearby and kept bumping John and everything in front of her. The Dragonborn-to-be was in a totally disgraceful state when the woman decided to land down a few miles away to the west of Vindusk Village, beat some city. She had a violent landing as the griffin too was at his limits. John crashed on his face with no willpower to even stand up. His busy was all beaten up despite having a body that stands on the peak of the human level. He was now just an armored guy lying down on his face in a puddle of mud. As his chain extended, there was a griffin lying on its side with a woman checking on it in a hurry. Phoebe, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This human. Wait here. The woman turned to John, walking to him, fuming with rage. She aimed her staff and towards him and kept a spell on charge to fire when he moves. You insolent criminal. You almost killed my husband and injured my friend. Don't think of dying easily. The woman said as she held John from the back of his armor and raised him up with his skinny arm. She tried to remove the mask, Krylon, from his face, but once she touched it, the mask shot a small spark of lightning at her hand. Damn it! She retreated her hand with anger. John always keeps a rune on the mask to prevent anyone from touching it. So, sorry for that. John spoke with a dizzy voice as he raised his finger to speak. He even politely removed his mask. The woman looked at him with a disturbed face, but once she saw the face behind the mask, she made an even more disturbed expression. John's face kept changing between the forms he is used to as he was not fully getting a grasp of lust in his situation. The woman felt the urge to back off, but something kept her. You freak. What are you? F. John tried to say something, but he was so dizzy after all the trashing. Huh. Foo. I don't hear you. The woman got her ear closer to hear him. Fusaro. A sudden blast hurled with his voice to the eardrums of the woman. Her head was twisted in a very wrong direction, and she flew like a ragdoll with her arms and legs spread everywhere. John fell with his face to the mud again, and she fell in the woodland nearby. John managed to attain his dignity back in this situation by raising the middle finger and cursing her. Bitch. Voice muffled in the mud. Part 2. A small girl emerged from John's shadow. She looked around and found Pride floating on its own nearby. She held it and returned to John, then poked him with the staff a few times. Human, I'm hungry. Let me rest. He waved his hand at the staff. Meanie, not helping you anymore, she said, and entered the cube, leaving Pride to free fall on John's head. You little. John mustered his power to push his aching body up and sat back with his ass in the mud. This boss mare bitch really got me. John complained as he assessed that damage. Status. Name, John Dare. Race, human, Nord. Age, 19. Level, early flame dragon heart. HP, 2218/4235. MP, 3086/4429. Condition, bruised, bone fractures. Seriously, man? John started healing himself, and Maid removed the mud in him by a whim of his aura. He then staggered up and looked around. Well, she should be dead or dying. Serves her right. He turned around and walked in the other direction, while putting his mask on his face once again. John, you hear me? John heard Mirren's voice in his head. Yes, I do. What's up? Are you all right? Yeah, thanks. What about the woman with you? That skinny-ass flat bitch? I fuss RO'd her shitty face across Tamriel. You did what? What you heard. Shit. WHY? What's going on? Listen, John. We are coming your way. We met someone, and he told us the true identity of the woman. It is now clear why she affected Ilverios once he got close. Cut the crap. Who is that psycho? It is the Green Lady. John. John. What happened to the Green Lady, John? John froze in his place, not knowing what to do. I may have messed up. Just a little bit, okay? Let's just run away. What are you saying, John? We are accompanying someone important to where you are. Whatever it is, he will explain it. Hey, hee. Easy for you to say. One more thing. This person says you shouldn't fight with the Green Lady near the woodland around the city of Sylvanar. It is said that this land is some sort of domain to that lady. I'll keep that in mind. Mirren hung up and decided to walk out of here as soon as possible. But once he took one step forward, he couldn't pull the other leg. Looking at it, there was a roof firmly rounded around his leg. Come on. The root tensed up all of a sudden and pulled towards the woodland behind John with frightening power. John splashed into the mud and got dragged all the way to the woods. That's official. I hate Valenwood. His body was still hurt when he got dragged into the woodland. At a certain clearing, a lot of roots and vines sprung up and held him tight bound for display. In front of him, he could see himself near a small river with the griffin Phoebe lying down, and the woman who turned out to be the Green Lady was tending to it. John followed the river by his sight to see some lights coming from afar. So that's the city of Sylvanar. John cursed his bad luck. He then turned to the woman and spoke. Pissed. Green Lady, can we talk things out now, please? John asked quietly. The woman didn't turn to him and left him ignored. Looking closely, her ears seemed to have bled. Oh, did you become deaf? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Oh God. Is it my fault? Shut up. The woman shouted at John, not wanting to hear his annoying voice anymore. Sorry. John kept quiet and looked around. Last time he was bound by a plant. He suffered enough for a lifetime, but he can be considered a pro in the field by now. The problem is, the one in front of him is the Green Lady, and he is in her domain. The Green Lady is the title given by Ifer, the most important Bosmeri spirit, to the female Bosmere that represents the immortal aspect of Bosmere strength. They are also widely known as the counterpart to the Sylvanar, the representative of the immortal aspect of the Bosmeri spirit. It is believed that their lives are entwined together, and one cannot live without the other. This Green Lady has mentioned a while ago that her husband has almost got killed, or something along the lines. This can explain her wild behavior, but she was a bit of an ass in John's book. Anyway, once she finished applying medicine on the griffin and covered it with some big leaves, she turned around to John. In this place, she can just absorb any amount of magicka she needs. In other words, she is stronger than before. Criminal, you have nowhere to run to now, she said. Yep. John gave a short reply. Humph, still acting tough? I'll make you pay and torture you until you tell me where is that man who injured my husband, she said with a lot of contempt. Lady, I have no idea what happened. I am also on a manhunt for this guy. My investigation led me to your place. That's all. John said. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you want. My friends are on their way and they will sort things out so, he said without indifference. Fool. The woman was enraged by his tone and raised her hand commanding some vines to strike John like whips. John's face changed from indifference to annoyance. Quit being a bitch already? Without caring about a green lady or whatnot anymore, John activated the enchantment of the ebony mail, the poison cloak. Plants and all kinds of living tend to avoid this enchantment in particular for its corrosive effect. The vines our root tying John up were either dead or retreated. You. Me what? The green lady didn't care anymore about taking a hostage and attacked John up front with magic. John stopped her magic with pride and returned the attack in a flash. The magicka around the grove moved towards the woman as she was back in combat form once again. John didn't take any chances either. Sheogorath. He called the blessing of Sheogorath, the mad champion, to activate. Once it did, John's vitality started to regenerate at a crazy speed. Blessing of Sheogorath. Mad champion, 2,500% vitality regen. Get him, the woman called and the wild answered. The racial ability of the boss mare, command animals, was used by the green lady and a horde of tigers, bears, snakes, and birds of prey started gathering from everywhere. John looked around him and smirked. So that's it? This is your army? Humph, you are dead, she said. John didn't even bother with some animals. He was someone on good terms with nature. He retrieved the greater token of Kine from the cube, then spoke. Kine. Greater token of Kine. Nordic amulet. Fortify vitality. Soothe the elements. Protection from beasts. Just like that, all the beasts the green lady gathered dispersed away. She looked around, then glared at John. Nordic shouting, I don't want to fight you. Too late. The pig-headed woman insisted on breaking John for some reason, and he was fed up with her shit. She used the magicka supplied by the grove she is in and evoked a powerful lightning spell at John. John replied with a lightning strike. She was a crafty one and sent vines to attack John from behind. John felt the threat and decided to push forward his game. Allmaker. Azura. He simultaneously activated the blessings of both the Allmaker and Azura, the root of power, and Dawn's beauty. Blessing of the Allmaker. Root of power, 2,500% magicka regeneration. Blessing of Azura. Dawn's beauty, 50% absorb magic attacks. Blue light came from his eyes as the magicka was running wildly in his body. The green lady felt the threat. He paused, but what was even more confusing was the powers her used. One of them resembled Highborn of the Altmare, and the other was Dragonskin of the Bretons. Is he an Imperial, a Nord, an Altmare, or a Breton? She manipulated the vines around her, then shot them from all directions. Useless. John cast scatterbolts and shot a barrage of lightning at every moving thing. This time, John saw an opportunity and attacked her by a well-concealed spell. The spell took a nice arc and hit the woman, but her body disappeared in a puff. John paused, trying to understand what happened, but things were weird. No sign was seen for the woman. But it wasn't long till someone appeared. A mirror image of John with his exact same artifact standing up for him. Then another. Then another. The number reached 10 to 20. And that is? John asked. You are troublesome, criminal. It is time to make you taste of my own poison. The woman spoke, but John couldn't see her. I think I get it now. You are an illusionist in terms of study despite being this good at the green magic. You talk too much. If that's right, then that explains your poor confrontation skills. You refuse to believe that you can squish a mere human with brute magicka, but you finally came to play with your personal deck of cards. What a green lady you are. Humph. The green lady wasn't happy to be talked to that way, so she attacked first. John didn't do much except waving greed, like a whip at the clones she created. They were weak as that spell can't copy the effect of John's special artifacts, spells, and powers. But the clones kept coming more and more. Then the green lady changed the strategy to launch weird attacks. Swords, arrows, animals all made of illusion came around to attack John. You really are getting on my nerves. John waved a big aura attack by the ebony blade, created an opening to retreat, then decided to blast the remaining illusions by magic. But while he was casting a simple spell, the spell broke on its own and blasted on his hand holding the staff. John could swear he cast a spell right, and he would never do such a novice mistake, but he realized it was also an illusion. The green lady disturbed his senses and interrupted the spell to stop him. He didn't like illusion this much, but he recognized the spell. The spell that the woman disappeared with was either invisibility or ghost walk. The spell she used to herself him was decoy. The spell that she used to clone him was evil twin. The attack she is shooting is a phantom pain spell, and the one she used to interrupt him was backlash. This green lady knew her illusion, but she didn't stop with just that. She used baits by the green magic and displayed more spells and illusion. John kept looking for her until he realized another spell was at play. She avoided his sight by seeing through his sight. A mind vision spell. He became sure of that after scanning himself. Oh, I see. You are a genius bastard of a green lady, John said and cast a vision spell called Heat Vision. The way he saw things changed. The world turned blue in the cold spots, but started to show many dots in shapes of green, yellow, orange, and red. John took a fast look around until he found a silhouette of a person. Gotcha. Several spells moved in strange arches from either the green lady or John. She, who hacked John's vision, could see the method John found her with. She wasn't sure that she hit her life signal in all movements, but that was something new. The green lady decided to go with one last maneuver. She distracted John from the front and then launched a sneak attack from the back. She used the green magic because she wanted John to notice. John indeed reacted to the green magic attack with his sword, which decreased his magic casting rate by a tiny bit, but that was all what she needed. She made John's situation jump from hardcore mode to hell mode by a blinding spell. Shit. John felt that his situation worsened with this last attack. He couldn't see. Some illusions attacked him and other roots bound his legs. He knew his lack of studying illusions got him here, but he was also facing the green lady, who is an arch-wizard illusionist. From the outside, he was standing while being entangled by the trees. He was pierced with a number of arrows made of the illusion spell, Phantom Pain, which felt as if the attack is real. Human, you were really some annoying pest. The green lady walked out with a dagger in hand. John heard her voice coming from everywhere, as well as her presence, which made it hard to tell which is true and which is fake. He started working on a countermeasure to dispel her illusions, but they were too complicated. She walked closer to him, claiming her hard-earned victory. Human, you will answer for all the crimes you have committed. You have hurt me, my friend, my husband, and killed several other boss mare and Dominion agents. You will be interrogated into a boiling chamber, and we'll see how fast you give up this troll skull masked friend of yours. She said. You crazy psycho bitch. John cursed. Insolent fool. In your situation, and you dare to insult. Boom. The green lady, who was standing in front of John, was nowhere to be seen after John's unintentional reaction. His fist was aiming forward and fuming after a very strong clash that just happened. In a slow motion, John heard the D word. His body shivered with power. He used a thunder cookie to break his left hand free, and that very left hand crashed into the face of the green lady from the right side, making a sort of a ripple effect on her cheek, while her mouth bled out and her eyes were almost gouged out. Ending the slow motion, the woman flew in a beeline towards God knows where, and John managed to stop the illusions by figuring out how to use lust to make the truth inducement effect work on him. In a few seconds, he was out of his binds. Man, this bitch is crazy. He looked around and started walking away. Green lady or not, she can go fuck herself for all that he cares about. After all, today was a big day. He defeated the first arch-wizard all by himself without relying on any outer method. Stop right there. But life wasn't willing to go easy on him today. John turned around to see who was calling him. It was a tall old woman, high elf, paler than usual. She was in a traveling armor and carried a great elven sword. She was also supporting the half-conscious green lady up. "You did this to her?" she asked. John looked at the two women, then looked around himself to see the place in a mess. "That's a good question," he said. "Is it?" The high elf woman raised her brows, amused by what she heard. "The idea of me doing this to her or not is a fundamentally theoretical question. Her actions and reaction define what others act and react to her. In Zomic we call what I said bullshit, so that I can buy time to teleport away," John said with his hand behind his back, casting magic. "Oh, I see." The old high elf woman smiled lightly as if she understood him. "Ciao." And John disappointed in a second. The old woman shook her head wryly and looked at the green lady she was supporting. She then put her down near a tree to recover in her domain. "Norrell, you should really start hearing people out first before throwing your spells around," she said, and walked to where John stood a while ago. The green lady, Norrell, recovered her hazy consciousness and looked at the high elf woman. "Gee, great ancestor," she called. The high elf ancestor looked back and saw Norrell looking at her meaningfully. "I knew what happened to Thoron, but we have talked about this before. Even if you are the green lady, you mustn't lose your emotions like that. You clearly got the wrong person." You were watching." "I was. Don't put a shameful display like that again," the high elf ancestor said, then started to scan the place in which John teleported. "Great ancestor, what are you doing?" "I have a few questions for the boy. He reminds me of someone unpleasant, so I must make sure history doesn't repeat itself." She picked a trail on John and teleported after him. Chapter 461, Martial Exchange. I was planning to publish a double, but my laptop has reached the end of its trip again. Maybe the last time this once, but some Egyptian-style mummification, and it will be alright, I guess. I have ordered a new gaming PC that will arrive in a few days, but until then, I am writing on phone. Hashtag power and a Hashtag author underscore goals. Hashtag broken thing. Loudly crying face, loudly crying face. Back when John and the Green Lady faced each other in the sky above Vindusk Village, Mirren, Miranda, Isha, and Ilverios headed to where Zara and Jax were stationed, but things weren't what they expected. Jax was surrounded by Dominion soldiers, had a flame Atronak carrying him from his shoulders, and kept waving a lava whip around. Zara was surrounded too, but she was talking to someone. "Hurry up. Free them." Isha jumped off the Shadow Hawk Atronak she was on and pulverized through all who were surrounding Jax. "Cowhead, you all right? Where is boss?" "He is occupied. Be careful. The man talking to Zara is extremely powerful." Jax pointed at a hooded man who seemed to be arguing with Zara. Mirren and Miranda snuck through the crowd of soldiers surrounding Zara and hurriedly took the hooded man as a hostage. "Drop your weapons. Now," Mirren shouted. The situation became tense as the soldiers aimed their weapons at Mirren, refusing to surrender, and it all became too hectic. The hooded man never acted or reacted, but just kept a cool, light attitude. "Please, stop it," Zara called for Mirren. "We'll get you out of here." Miranda came behind Zara and pulled her away. "No, Zara is not in danger. You are misunderstanding things," Zara said. Mirren and Miranda paused to understand what's going on, but the Dominion soldiers seemed to be following the hooded man and all surrounding Zara, the same situation with Jax. "Please, put down your weapon. This one will handle this." This time the one who spoke was the hooded man, revealing himself to be a Kajiat. His words were to the Dominion soldiers, who reluctantly retreated. Mirren didn't understand what's going on, but he wasn't letting a hostage go just because the current turned to his favor. Now nice and slow, Mirren tried to hold the man from his shoulder, but as soon as he did, his point of view started to spin and felt a slam to his back. The hooded Kajiat simply twisted his shoulder while barely holding Mirren's hand, sending him in circles. Miranda released an arrow soon after that the hooded man threw Mirren, but the man showed some supernatural flexibility and reflexes, evading an arrow from almost a point blank. The hooded Kajiat looked towards where Mirren was, but he wasn't there any longer, and so did Miranda. The pair magically disappeared, but sure as hell they were around. Slash swoosh. An arrow and a blade moved at the same instant, targeting the man's vitals. The man jumped and twisted his body, evading the two attacks with a hair's width. The Altmaier twins wouldn't let such a chance of an enemy being midair pass by, and so they returned with lethal attacks, but the man managed to evade with graceful movements until he landed on a single foot and kicked Mirren without even getting a firm foothold. Mirren was launched back like a stringless kite, but he didn't resist. Rather, he held his sword and dagger in a weird movement, resembling a bow and arrow. Miranda took an arrow and ran recklessly toward the hooded Cagiate, attacking as if she is holding a sword. Switch. The hooded Cagiate felt a motion through the space, and all of a sudden, Mirren and Miranda switched places. Mirren was waving his sword and Miranda shot a very accurate arrow. It was going to be a hit no matter how skilled the opponent is. This cooperation and understanding between the two have reached a ridiculous level that even startled the hooded Cagiate. But no matter what attack, this man was not someone to look down on. He adjusted his stance to firmness and waved his two hands together. All his 10 claws brightened with the moonlight, revealing the nature of his aura. With 2 hand waves, he stopped Mirren's sword by 4 claws and Miranda's arrows by 2. This stunning scene viewed the height of the martial arts this man has trained, but what followed showed how terrifying it can go. Hiya! The hooded Cagiate shouted and pushed with his 2 arms at the same time. Towards Mirren was a palm attack, carrying the unstoppable force of the moonlight aura. Towards Miranda was a claws attack, as if blades of moonlight aura sliced everything in their path. From point blank, Mirren was hit and crashed on the ground nearby, but kept rolling to avoid injury. Miranda performed an acrobatic side jump and evaded 4 claw attacks while sacrificing an arrow to block the 5th. Nice! The hooded Cagiate was impressed. Mirren evaded a dangerous injury and Miranda went out of the situation swiftly. The fight paused as the 3 exchanged looks. Senior. Miranda nodded to the hooded Cagiate. Senior. Mirren stood up while holding his arm. Juniors. The hooded Cagiate replied. The 3 showed acknowledgement to one another. You two are Desert Wind? You must be from the Masters. Strange. Never heard about you two. The hooded Cagiate said. We are core adepts were. We disobeyed direct orders to operate on our own. Mirren said. Oh, that's bad. Senior must be from the Gautfong school. Miranda spoke. Indeed. How do you know? Impressive defense, good stance, particular muscle mass. Wow, this one was seen through that much? But still, you are disadvantaged against me. You can ask your friends to join in if you want to make the odds somewhat even. The hooded Cagiate said. We're busy trying to get a friend from trouble, Senior. We'll spar in a later chance. Mirren said. This one insists. The hooded Cagiate showed a fair amount of fighting spirit. He wanted to keep the fun going. I'll entertain you, Miranda said. The others looked at her doubtful, but she threw her bow and loosened her quiver. She then grabbed 2 knives from her belt. This was an unusual scene as Miranda never showed her skill in close combat that often. Still, what's more strange was the sight of those strange knives. They were short curved blades in crescent shape, held in a reverse grip with a ring on top of each handle that the index finger goes through. Karambit knives. Those lethal things were very rare in these parts, and a few knew how to use them. They were weapons that can easily resemble claws. The hooded Cagiate didn't turn down the offer and took a firm stance. To that, Miranda took a low stance on her fingertips. The hooded Cagiate noticed the stance, but there was not much to react as Miranda was already kicking at him midair. Strike, block, strike, block, strike, block. The kicks midair were blocked by the man's arm bracers, but that was just the beginning. Miranda unnaturally went low and took a large circular lower leg attack at the man, who resorted to hanging one leg up to avoid, then kick it towards Miranda. She was anticipating this, and her karambits attacked the leg, aiming for vital blood vessels. The man retreated his leg in an instant and took 3 steps away to regain a stance. Miranda was impressed by the man's fast retreat that she couldn't prevent. Usually, she should keep attacking, but the man took 3 large steps to completely escape her range. He wasn't underestimating her at all. He looked at her blades with keen eyes, noticing the vibrations through them. You are not desert wind, but whispering claws. For a non-Khajiit, what a feat. He couldn't help but praise her. Thank you, senior. He looked at Miran, but the latter shook his head, indicating that he doesn't practice that art. The desert wind martial art that Miran used relies mostly on dual-wielding swords, which is extremely hard to master. Miran uses many kinds of swords, but his personal favorite is a one-handed sword combined with a dagger. The Gautfang martial art that the hooded Khajiit used is a style that is known for using the flow of energy through its user. It is a balanced and fast-moving martial art with a defense that is reminiscent of the Nord warriors. It has a versatility that requires coordination and strength, using aspects from other fighting styles, such as grappling. It is believed that even a quadrupedal furstock, such as the Cinchrock, can learn the Gautfang. The Whispering Claw that Miranda used is a fast-moving and silent fighting style that is meant for taking another life, ideally for an assassin. Masters of that art are known for their quick reflexes and flight-like acrobatics. The style is considered the counter to the Gautfang. This is interesting. 2 Altmere ladies are good at such arts. This is very rare. Let's fight a bit more. The hooded Khajiit was all fired up. We are really late. Krylin is fighting that woman alone, Miran said. That woman? You mean the woman in Vindusk village? The Khajiit asked. No one wanted to disclose any information to him, but he wasn't anyone dull. Forget about your friend. He's a goner. The Sylvanar was injured, and his green lady must be going berserk right now. The hooded Khajiit said. Miran. What? Miranda? Who? Isha. Where? Ilvirios. When? Jax. The others reacted in shocked expression. There is to react with. The green lady, you know, the spiritual leader of Valenwood. The hooded Khajiit said. The others were well aware of the title, but needed a minute to get it to their heads. Lord Maine was just explaining the situation to Zara when you interrupted us just now, Zara said. Miran. What? Miranda? Who? Isha. Where? Ilvirios. Whose? Jax. The hooded Khajiit put down his hood, showing his face that resembled a normal Cathy but had too many braids of various colors on his head. The Maine, the spiritual leader of the Khajiit. A unique breed of Khajiit. Khajiit tradition holds that only one Maine can be alive at one time. Mainies can only be born under a rare alignment of the moon's Maser and Secunda when, according to legend, a third moon actually appears. The Maine of this generation, in particular, is known to be a top expert in martial arts to the point where he was known as a warmonger. Now, this friendly-looking Khajiit uncle has both the skill and the fire to fight, but to think he is the Maine himself. Krylin is fighting the green lady and we fought the Maine? Who else is going to show up? My grandmother? Miran went pale from the thought. It's okay. This one doesn't mind a good fight. Let's just... You crazy bitch. Slow down. No one knew what had just passed, but everyone had a good enough imagination to picture what's going on. That looks like fun. The Maine said, let's join them. Chapter 462, John versus an Ancestor. I think I shouted elemental fury in my thumb, 'cause I write a double chapter on phone. Daily plus monthly extra. Part 1. Well, I don't remember owing you money. You don't. Good, because in a matter of fact, I don't owe anyone any money. However, if you want money, that's a different story. Oh ho ho. What is your best offer? Clingy High Elves discount. A wee lesser than family and friends discount. Nord. Huh? You can't fake an accent in front of me. Come on. I just shouted that green lady twice. Of course I'm a Nord. Been a while. Since? Meeting a voice master. One must admit that unlike common Nords, voice masters are more wise and pick what they say carefully. I was told I have a big mouth, and I ain't wise, lady. Heh. We'll see about that. What's so funny? Unlike my kin, I don't hate Nords. Your race is the purest human race remaining, descendants of the old Atmarans. Same goes for you Altmer, descendants of the old Aldmer. You know, I hate to admit it, but Altmer and Nord share too much. I tend to disagree. We are the complete opposites. Really? How about this? A Nord and an Altmer walk into a bar. An hour later, some guards come in saying they're looking for a wanted man who is tall, good-looking, won't stop talking about their ancestry and how to stick up his arse. Who do you think the people will suspect? This is oddly convincing. Actually, if you pay attention, the stick up the arse thing is totally Altmer. I beg your pardon. Ain't giving. Altmer are the most mannered race in Tamriel by far. No, you folk are just too hard on yourselves. Who lives in a goddamn tropical island and go out to conquer the world? We Nords have more right in that one. We either go out or they will come in. Ugh. Thank goodness there is no oil around. Oomph. You are indeed a Nord with a month. Told you. Now what? Let me ask you a few questions. Interview? I'm a mercenary all right, but I ain't for hire. Not hiring. Inspecting? You can say so. Do I have to record any birthmarks or tattoos? No. Do I have to record how many Deidre I can summon or how cute my cat is? No. Just show me your aura. My aura? Yes, that art that you humans became so good in. It reflects what kind of man you are. Well, in that case, John didn't hide his hostility anymore and let loose of his tyrant aura. The moment he met that woman, he just wanted to turn and leave, but that wasn't much of an option as soon as she showed up after him. His agitated aura that he held back since the beginning was as if a fire spreading on a surface of gasoline, fast and violent, then steady and still. The High Elven ancestor felt the aura that is ever so domineering and sadistic. Its rhyme wasn't unsteady but perfectly controlled. Moreover, it has this chaotic good feeling to it.
Alas, it is what I feared,
the Altmer woman said faintly. John didn't reply, waiting for her to go on. Another monster, she said, and reached out to the great sword resting on her back. John said nothing. He just smiled faintly, but after some thinking, he spoke. Oh, I see. I see. John nodded, understanding the woman's reasoning. He looked carefully at that Altmer old woman. Unlike him, who was akin to a dark knight in his full ebony, she was akin to a paladin in light white armor. Her armor was an elven breastplate with arms and legs, well covered. Then she had a white robe over that, with a small hood covering her white hair and revealing her aged face. Despite the wrinkles, she seemed to have aged, taking care of herself despite being abnormally pale. Still, her sword felt strong and powerful. A high elf is rarely seen fighting with such a big sword, let alone a female Altmer. This should be one hell of an experience. But just like high elves, she cast Empower and Accelerate before a fight. John focused his aura to battle mode, thinking the outer shell, and thickening it while taking out the ebony blade, and completely reinforcing it. He held it with two hands and faced the woman. The two were silent for almost a minute, but that minute was already how the fight started. In their heads, hundreds of simulations happened. Defend, counter, lose. Attack, attack, lose. Evade, attack, evade, counter, win. But it wasn't that simple at all once the fight started. The two bounced on each other with one kill move at the same time. It is all for who is faster now. Clink screch swoosh. The two swords met. The two wielders passed one another, exchanging places. The result was, John's sword was sent flying. The woman's sword was cut in half. The two turned back to one another with disbelief shown in their eyes. His sword was better. Her skill was better. My sword is mithril, she said. My skill is 7 paces of 10 near perfection, he said. Her mithril sword was no match for the indestructible ebony blade. The Fortify Swordsmanship enchantment had a 7 out of 10 effect of its top potential due to the enchantment awakening. Once it passed 5 out of 10, the sword was already incredible in all aspects and enhanced John's skill by a great deal. Still, that woman took his sword down and he cut hers. How did this even happen? He asked. Ha, ha ha, I have no idea, she said, but her laugh turned to a decisive one a second later. She stood between John and his sword, held her hand out and cast Bound Greatsword. What about you? She asked. John checked his options. He can call pride or greed, but his weapons, they wanted much to his skill right now. He thought about it and came up with something. First, he cast Empower and Accelerate, like her. This alone added 10% to his power and speed, which were already buffed by his aura. Second, QHULD Haas, Armor Might Health. A very pure and mystic power exploded around John and returned around his body, creating a knight armor made of energy on top of his armor. His appearance was astonishing, but to the eyes of the Altmare woman, he was still unarmed. Are you done? She asked. He extended his arm to the side, and all of a sudden, the ebony blade stuck far away in the ground started twitching and jumped out of its place back to John's hands. Now I'm ready, he said. The woman didn't expect to see a weapon flying back to the hands of its owner, but that can be expected from the kind of opponent she is facing. Then two went at it again. Tink, and again. Tink. 2 exchanges in 1-7, the 3-1, and the speed kept rising. How those two swung their swords was a mystery even to them. It was all depending on the thrill, the momentum, and the survival instincts of a warrior. Even though she was using a bound sword, her skill in magic was as amazing as her skill in swordsmanship, and she maintained and reconstructed it during the battle against a terrifying sword suck as the ebony blade. Between the two, a blade storm of dangerous energies and irritated magicka laid waste to the terrain. They were fighting in a clear area not far from the Traveler's Road, but the effect of the battle could be heard from the nearby city of Sylvanar. A few seconds after that last exchange, the Green Lady arrived near the two, waiting for a chance to support the Altmare woman. Great Ancestor, I came to help. Her words marked the end of the exchange between the two. John retreated away, leaving 2 straight trails in the ground after him, and the woman jumped to the back. The two showed signs of breathing hard, as they seemed to have put some stamina in the last few moves. Ancestor? Who? John looked at the Green Lady and then to the woman in front of him. You? Stay out of this, Norrell. The Altmare woman spoke to the Green Lady. John was at a loss for words. An Altmare ancestor, a Green Lady. Who else left? The Khajiit main? But what is terrifying right now is how he managed to stay his ground in front of an ancestor. Putting her in the same regards as Divaith Fyr is kinda blasphemous, but at least an ancestor is someone he needs to be very careful with. On the other hand, the Altmare ancestor woman was in a state of wonder. There are what is known as monsters in this world. These are simply people who have frightening talents and great luck to grow further. Those people are either saviors or conquerors. But John had a different view of the term. To him, the term monster may refer to many things, but it is mostly used by those people who reach their mental capacity to understand and perceive things. Something like witches are evil was said in the Middle Ages. Even though with the probability of the existence of supernatural powers on Earth, many women of knowledge, herbalists and astronomers were dragged in public and burned on the stick. It is just the same way people think. If someone is too strong, they will use and abuse their strength, making common weak people see them as freaks of nature and monsters. In a magical world, those monster people are a different case than from non-magical worlds. Magic has tremendous abilities as it is, and combining a heaven-defying talent with such a force gives birth to those monsters. People who perceive themselves as capable and get affected by their own power that pushes them towards great things. For example, if someone uses a certain method for magic casting, and it happens to be necromancy, the vile art, those necromancers have no respect for graves or the honored dead, making use of every corpse they come across, while in fact, they may have shunned that practice if they were not yet to become necromancers, but now that they are ones and got a taste of that power, they won't simply go back and revert easily. The same goes for pyromancers who burn people alive despite how cruel it is and how horrible it is to smell a burnt corpse. In the end, the people referred to as monsters are not much different. They are talented ones who can't give up their talents and drown in their powers more and more. John can't deny this is the case with him. Now he is facing a. Do you know what is the only thing that can break a monster? She asked. John shook his head. It is another monster, she said. Part 2. Do you know what is the only thing that can break a monster? She asked. John shook his head. It is another monster, she said. A monster, of all the things John come to face, is another monster with the title of an ancestor. The irony. He couldn't help himself but smile wryly. Yes, she was also a monster. She was once called that by no one other than her own blood, her brother. She was rebelled against, fought by force, and received a lot of hatred and contempt because of her power and talent. Despite the odds, she swept through all who opposed her unforeseen and achieved one of the greatest legacies in the modern High Elven history. Her power grew with time, and even with the demise of the Altmare at the end of the Second Era, she remained and became a hermit ancestor by the years that followed. So you're saying that as a monster, you are to take me down? John asked. Yes, just like how I was broken before, she said. Oh. John heard something interesting, but the Altmare ancestor seemed to be willing to go all out on his this time. She held the bound sword firmly this time and made a full charge at him. John knew she was going to use all her might to bring him down, and truth be told, he felt an unlimited amount of magicka moving within her. Pride. Despite holding the ebony blade with two hands, John called for pride. That came out from the cube and floated like a drone over John's head. He may have used this move before, but this is the first time someone sees it. A staff floating on its own and casting spells by itself. Now that's something to keep the term monster fresh in mind. Die. She waved her sword with an unstoppable force at John, but the ebony blade was there to take the impact. John, however, felt like his arms going numb and barely moved to defend the second coming attack. Women at these parts are so crazy, he shouted. Stop talking and fight, she said while attacking another time. STFU, you freak. I just dragged my ass from a fight with that crazy chick. Gimme a fucking break. No, I'll kill you here and now. You can't kill me, let alone defeat me. John stopped her sword and pushed back. Even breaking me won't stop me. I was defeated more than I ever won. I was broken before, and here I stand once again stronger than before. I lost a foot. I lost my magic. I lost fingers of my hand. My left eye almost went blind. I was broken in the gutter of a prison, and here I recovered once again. I returned. What more can you do? More than his power, his words pushed the woman further back. She carried a lot of negativity on her face, but she was still coming at him. You were right. Breaking someone requires more. Breaking me and many others in the fall of Somerset to that foul Numidium led by the one you call Talos. He marched to our home, sieging our castles, killing our armies, and even when we ganged up on him in a fight, he put us all down, me included, with a stab right an inch beside my heart. And I had to watch my country bend the knee while I was being rescued while hiding underground like a rat. Takes a lot to break someone, believe me. And here you are, John said as her words didn't get to his head. And here I am, preventing the chance of another monster to be born among your race by taking its head, she replied. Fat chance. Clink swoosh. She offered her strongest and fastest attack this time. The ebony blade flew off John's hand again, but he didn't put effort to retrieve it. In fact, pride, that was floating above all that time, shot a strong spell towards the woman, pushing her to retreat. John was mercilessly dishing out spells while she kept the ebony blade under her foot despite its struggle to return to John. Still, pride was a very troublesome staff in the eyes of the Altmare woman. Despite John's various abilities that kept him alive against her, she couldn't understand pride. A staff flying around its owner casting magic on its own as if it is a third hand? This was something absurd in the field of magic. No mage has more than two hands. Having a third may open the door for a lot of possibilities no one has ever achieved before. John knew what it meant to have a third hand and how it happened. Pride, the elder staff of power and fate, sin, imagination magic. Will of Pride knew. pride was evolving lately and started to have the power to move on its own will. Of course, that will was under John's control. Yet despite all that, he was still not able to put the desired pressure on that woman. Their magicka was running short, but John had a few tricks up his sleeve, and it is almost time for one. The Altmare woman decided to let go of the ebony blade. She was stepping on and charged towards John before the blade reaches him, evading all the spells he sends at her. It was all now within her grasp. She waved her sword but didn't expect that John was having a trap for her. A red glow shone from his left side as a black cylinder object was aimed at her. Boom! A blast was heard as she felt her abdomen turning numb, and she was sent a few meters to the back. Looking at it, John had formed greed into a cannon-like object around his hand and used his aura to make a close-ranged attack with such a power. It indeed worked on her, being the first attack he managed to cleanly land on her. Great Ancestor! The Green Lady ran towards the Altmare woman, but the latter seemed fine. Right now, it seems that the Green Lady was willing to join the battle and fight John 2-on-1. John retrieved the ebony blade, but he was in a troublesome position again, as he had to face the Altmare Ancestor woman, who kept pushing him back, and the Green Lady, who is a troublesome illusionist. "I know you two are strong, and I will be defeated this way," he said, then sent the ebony blade back in the cube. But do you really think that I can't scratch you back if I wanted to?" As he said so, he took out a dagger this time. And that was not any dagger, it was Maroon's razor. Maroon's razor. Daedric. Poison damage. Instant kill chance. Fortified dagger skill. Oomph. You couldn't defeat us with your large sword. You think you can do that with a small knife? The Green Lady smirked. "I would agree with your reasoning any day. The bigger the better in my book, but sometimes you need to be short and smart," John replied. "Norrell, retreat," the Altmare woman said. "But Ancestor, that is Maroon's razor. It may kill you with just a scratch," she said, recognizing John's dagger. It wasn't hard to recognize a very unusual weapon such as the razor for its unique appearance, but the same can't be said for the ebony blade and the ebony mail. The infamous razor was known to be the weapon that can kill with one scratch. John can indeed scratch them, as he is the kind of opponent they need to sacrifice a few fingers to take him down. "I'll support you from behind." The Green Lady retreated and started casting a lot of protection on the Altmare woman. Stone Skin, Accelerate, Hasten, Empower, and Healing. "Hey, that dirty," John said. "Is it?" The Green Lady smirked. John refused to play by their own rules and put his touch on the fight. "Greed, do your thing." In John's hand was Maroon's razor, Greed, which was acting as a cape, moved on its own and entered the razor. The two women could see the strange anomaly and saw a weirder scene afterward. The razor, which is a wide-bladed dagger, changed to a very thin-bladed short sword with a delicate grip and a small guard maintaining its theme. "What is that?" they asked. There is only one way to find out. Would not KSD. Whirlwind Fury Tempest. John used the Whirlwind Sprint while aiming the weapon forward. His speed was unimaginable as he reached the Altmare woman. She put a hasty guard, but what happened next scared the ever-living out of her. The small blade in John's hand pierced through the first layer of protection put by Norrell, the second layer put by her, the bound greatsword she blocked with, the elven breastplate she put on, and the layers of fabric under it straight to her heart. It was sure death moment that awakened a very terrible trauma. The blade pierced the same spot that carried a grave scare from almost 1,000 years ago. A terrible fright possessed the elven ancestor as she felt the blade piercing through her skin. She used her own energy to blow herself backward away from John and John away from her. In her state, she flew backward with no balance and crashed in a bad shape, paler than a sheet of paper. Swoosh. Give up? The ebony blade was right in front of her neck as she was kneeling down with a line of blood dripping from the side of her lips. Great Ancestor! The Green Lady freaked out. Don't. John warned her by putting the sword closer. The Altmare woman didn't seem to be surrendering even in this state. You better kill me while you have the chance, she said. Believe me, I have every chance and all rights, but that isn't worth it. I'm not the conqueror who broke you. I'm just some mercenary investigating something when that green bitch decided I am some sort of a criminal, John said. She looked at him with resentment. Show me your face. Your true face, she said. John felt unpleasant, but so he did. He put away both Krylin and lust. Long red hair, blue eyes, light beard, and a young handsome face. How old are you? She asked. 19. Shut up. Blasphemy. Both the Green Lady and the Altmare woman denied it right off. They were defeated by 19-years-old human. Their ages combined are almost 100 times his age. Surrendering or not, I don't want to kill you, lady, John said. The woman hated surrendering even more, but she no longer had the will to fight. He is too young to be the monster she faced. He also had a different looks and manner of speech. That was not another one of those ghosts of Tiber Septim that haunted her for centuries. Even among the ones I know, you are a monster among the monsters. I capitulate. Thank you. John put his sword away immediately. He fought against an Altmare ancestor. Not only did he live to tell the tale, but he managed to make her admit defeat. His knees almost gave in, but her remained on by sheer willpower. Norrell, great answers. The sound of a running beast came by as a gigantic Cintrot stopped not far from them and occasioned on it. He saw the situation from afar, and his jaw dropped. Topaz is here. The Green Lady looked to the side and recognized the man. After him, a fast carriage drove by fast, followed by a number of Dominion soldiers. Isha came out followed by the rest. Krylin, you all right? Miranda and Mirren hurried to John, but froze in front of the Altmare ancestor. The situation was a bit tense for some reason, but John gave a hand for the Altmare woman and helped her stand up to break the tension. I hope that you remain true to your word, he said. I will, she spoke. Teacher. The Khajiit named Topaz jumped off the Cintrot he was on and hurried to her. Enough, I am fine, she said and dismissed his worries. Isha came near John and spoke to him. There is an update on the situation after we met the Main, she said. The Main? Where? Isha pointed to the Khajiit called Topaz. The Main is called Topaz? Did they run out of names? John wondered. I did. That's not what matters now. We came across a messenger on the way here. Zane appeared in Sylvanar City an hour ago. She said. What shit? John almost wanted to slap everyone around. He broke into the grotto of Sylvanar, and some fight happened, but he disappeared. We need to go now, she said. Wait, what's going on? Who is that, Zane? The Green Lady asked. The one we are after. The troll skull man that almost killed your husband, dimwit, John replied with an irritated face. She lost all the composure and the air of a Green Lady, then suddenly teleported from her place. Wait, Norrell. The Altmare woman tried to stop her, but she felt weak due to John's last attack. Easy, teacher. Main Topaz supported her. The situation was somehow dependent on her, so she swallowed her pain. That man, you were after. He attacked Thoron, the Sylvanar. She spoke to John. I know. We are trying to stop him as well. If Sylvanar Thoron is poisoned by his spear, we can help with that. John said, and Isha nodded. Can this one ask for your help then? Main Topaz asked. As long as we are promised safety inside Sylvanar, John said. You have this one's word, the Main said. Let's not waste time then. Everyone moved out. The Main supported the Altmare ancestor to his Cintrot, and Isha woke Mirren and Miranda up by a snap of her fingers, telling them to hurry up. John took a deep breath and moved the last, looking at the blade in his hand. Maroon's Needle, Daedric, Paralysis Poison Damage, Instant Kill Chance, 2%, Fortified Dagger Skill, Skip Protection, Greed Effect. It was the perfect weapon for an assassin no matter what, but that woman was very lucky. He looked at his other hand. Old Man's Coin, Fortify Luck. It was in tails. John hated tales. Sigh. Not my lucky day, it seems. Chapter 463, Investigation. Big thanks for at Hakira on P4 Tray 0N. I was thinking that as soon as I get the new PC, don't know when, I would start publishing early access chapters on P4 Tray 0N for plus $5 patrons. Let me know what you guys think. What pisses me off is that we were right on his tail then when we were this close. This close, I tell you. We find ourselves a green lady, a Maine, and an Altmare ancestor picking fights with us all in the same bloody hour. Now, I don't know what to call this, but you guys have a big hole in your tree. I love holes, not in trees, but that's not a hole I like. John turned around to the Maine, lady, and ancestor in question. The three looked upset being scolded out in the open like that, but no one replied to John. Zane has disappeared, again, Isha said as she walked out of the central gigantic grotto in the middle of the city of Sylvanar. What about the Thoron? The green lady Norrell asked. He is stable now. He'll get better in a few days with rest. He is also asking to see you, Isha said. Just as she said so, Norrell let out a long sigh of relief. Not sure how, but when she breathed, the tense atmosphere around the city eased up by a lot, and the trees felt like breathing too. John looked around to observe this phenomenon, then looked at the green lady as she was running in the central tree. What was that just now? He asked. That's the ability of the green lady, the Maine said. Norrell can control more than just some green magic and illusions. She is the personification of the Bosmeri raw wildness and passion of their primal past. Meaning? She is connected to the forest and the beasts. The Sylvanar is more of a civilized personification of the culture and politics, so they call him the voice of the people. She is more of the emotions in this regard. That explains why she had a short fuse and attacked me on sight. John nodded. Well, I'm glad you understand, but there is a point to her short temper. The green lady has a bestial nature. If the Sylvanar is killed, her bestial nature is irrevocably unleashed, and her fury turns on all those who are involved in his until she joins him in death. Thoron being hurt this time didn't cause much of a mayhem, but she went on a real rampage with you. This one is sorry for letting you handle her on your own. It's okay, John said with a tired face. If the green lady goes Coco every time the Sylvanar gets hurt, it is a miracle that this country is still standing. The Altmare woman ignored their conversation and arrived near the great grotto of Sylvanar. The tree will recover, but I don't know what to make of this. Which room did this blast come from? She looked to the side, asking a Bosmere officer. It is the treasury room, my lady. What was stolen? She asked. Nothing we know of, my lady. Nothing? Nothing at all? She questioned. According to the prior investigation, all the treasury items and coffers were sealed as they should be. We don't know what was taken. The officer confirmed. Only Lord Sylvanar knows the content of the treasury in detail. The group looked to one another and seemed to be in a dilemma. What do you make of this? The Altmare ancestor turned to John. Only the Sylvanar can tell. I want to conduct my own investigation if possible, but I'll wait for permission. John said. In fact, he has already sent Nefertiti to see what happened. What about you, Topaz? She asked the Maine. This one agrees with the Nord. It is not good to wait while a criminal is on the run, and some item can be exposed, but we need to maintain a wise line of thoughts and learn that our opponent is cunning and strong, the Maine said. The Altmare ancestor nodded and kept thinking. Hey, John called the Maine.
Yes.
The Maine turned to him. As the high fluff of the Khajiit society, why are you called Topaz? John asked. That's not really much of an interesting story, friend. This one's teacher, which is the great ancestor over here, was the one who gave him that name. You see, this one's mother hoped that this one becomes a Sainche or a Rot, so she called him Two Paws. However, this one became a Maine instead, so he changed his name to fit the title. And that's how this one became Topaz. Maine Topaz said. That's a touching story, John said. Only an idiot like you will feel anything from that. Isha retorted from the back. It was then when a guard came from the Sylvanar's grotto. The lord and lady wish to speak. All present guests can enter. The group nodded to one another and decided to go in. This was the opportunity to investigate what happened. The Altmare ancestor went in followed by the main, but as soon as John walked in, he was stopped. The mercenaries are to hand over their weapons. Swords, spears, staves, and daggers, especially daggers. Orders of the lady. The guard said, "Are you fuck?" Isha was lashing out, but John spoke. "Okay." He took out the ebony blade, Pride and Maroon's razor. He simply tossed them at the guard and walked past him. The rest saw John being John and understood there is no threat. If things came to worst, he has an armory to power up an army all around one finger. The main seemed interested in John. "You are really interesting, Nordfriend. Mind if this one asks for a spar?" he said as he led John inside the grotto. "None at all, but I just defeated a green lady and an Altmare ancestor." "Please." The main snorted. "Norrell is an illusionist, and from what I can imagine, you are strong towards illusions. You are not wrong. And Lady A, teacher is not at the level of an actual ancestor." "What do you mean?" "An ancestor is someone who lived long and saw beyond the world. She did, but she was injured and never recovered. She is greatly weakened compared to other ancestors." "Is that so?" "Believe it or not, friend, ancestors are nothing you or this one can compare to. Now, how about a spar?" "I'll pass." "Ugh, suit yourself." The group climbed the grotto from inside. Truth be told, living inside a tree didn't look that interesting for the monocolored decorations. Floor made of wood, walls made of wood, ceiling made of wood. But there were at least some window, and the lighting was installed by torch bugs. From one window, John could see all Sylvanar from above. The city was just a big forest made of trees, and some sheds made of hide and bones. Bossmare weren't much of fabric makers as they don't use plant-based materials. On top of the uniqueness of this city and its towering trees, Sylvanar has a wide history that dates back to the Merethic era. The first Sylvanar and the first Green Lady were a childless couple who tended the eldest and most ancient tree, blessed by Ifer himself, as their own offspring. It was later when the grotto of Sylvanar, like the one of Elden Root, was seeded by the one in Falinesti. Since that time, Sylvanar was the holiest city of the Green Pact Bossmare as it was founded or occupied by the first of the Sylvanar and his followers. This city has witnessed history long and wide from the Golden Age of the Ayleid, the Alessian Slave Rebellion, the unification of Valenwood, the First, Second, Third, and Fourth Empires, the First, Second, and Third Almarai Dominions. If these trees could speak, and they can, fascinating voids in the pages of history can be filled. "We have arrived." The voice of the Jaxper guard woke John from his daydream. Outside the central grotto were normal Dominion soldiers, but inside and in vital and holy places exist the Jaxpers, personal guards of the Sylvanar. Their outfit is made entirely of leather accented with bone. The Altmare ancestor led the path to a certain room followed by the rest. There, the Green Lady received them. "Where is Thoron?" "He is resting." Looking at the room, John figured out it is the treasury room for the big hole that was open in its wall. This grotto was a powerful tree known for its magic resistance. Opening such a hole required some formidable artifact. "That's a nasty-looking hole," John remarked. "Some sort of flame magic was used. We are not sure what it was," Norrell said. "What happened to the rest of the items?" John inquired why the treasury was empty. "We wanted to take inventory of our belongings while you mercenaries conduct your own investigation. We will inform you what item is missing if we see fit," Norrell said. "If you are cooperating with us, I suggest you at least show some honesty. Outsider, the only reason why you are here is that we know that you know more than us regarding the criminal. We want him chained and dragged for execution," Norrell said with hostility. "I'm afraid that won't be possible." Isha stormed towards Norrell. "Easy there." Mirren held her up. "Sorry, she has her personal grudge here." Mirren's words were cunning and removed suspicions. "I appreciate you saving my husband, Redguard." I plan to reward you, but that man attacked my husband in our land, so I plan to make an example of him. Norrell wasn't backing down in regards to Zane.
Fine.
John replied. You can have him. Krylin. Isha turned to John with an angry face, but Mirren whispered to her. Leave it to him. Isha reluctantly walked away. Now, mercenary, care to inform us what you know? I promise you a full pardon for attacking me and a reward if your cooperation led to the arrest of the criminal Zane. Bleh. A pardon for what again? You. Just let me do my work. Can I cast some spells? He asked. Norrell didn't like John one bit, but he was strong, very strong. The Altmare ancestor nodded to her. You are permitted. Thanks, John said with a nasty smile as he snapped his fingers and pride appeared in it. This? Norrell. Oh my. The ancestor? Topaz. By Norrell's orders, John should have handed over his weapons before he enters the tree, but some things were hard to make John do. John took the cape on his shoulders, which is greed, reformed it into a large ball, and stuffed his left hand in. He had the cube in his left hand, and from it, he took out the Elder Scroll of Sun. The reason why he did so was to never show it to the ones around him. He then positioned the head of pride inside greed towards the Elder Scroll and evoked a very powerful spell that seemed to be using a ton of magicka. The level of the spell was at least a master spell. Golden light came out through greed and started overtaking the room in a flash before it disappears. John then hurriedly hid greed and the Elder Scroll. Once everything returned to normal, everyone opened their eyes to see the room as it was, with only one exception. Part of the reality fabric in front of John was acting up as if existence was bending itself. A temporal flux. The same technique John used when he first investigated the Alakar Desert. Gods. Moon's mercy. Those who knew what it was stepped back right away. The Altmare ancestor was in a shocked face herself. Let's see. According to the report, the intruder was here 2 hours ago. This means here, right? John cast some spells towards the flux and golden particles flew around the room, forming an image of something that shouldn't be here. The past. John tuned it forward and backward until they found an image of Zane. Here you are. The image showed that Zane walked in this room, which was filled with all sorts of treasures. He ignored them all and headed somewhere near the tree wall. He then used his spear to open the wall and take some sort of a staff out. The image wasn't clear, so no one recognized the staff, but as soon as he took it, he aimed towards an outer wall and blew it up. He then jumped and through the hole, opened up a portal and escaped. John ended the image here and dissolved the temporal flux with easy. Now, First Lady of Valenwood, mind telling us what that was? He asked. All eyes landed on Norrell, whose face was white with shock. She looked between the Altmare ancestor and the main. I have no idea, she said. What? I beg your pardon. The two reacted negatively. The Green Lady is the forest. If the trees do not talk to her, then something must be wrong. At first, the tree was not replying, so I thought they are taking their time. They always do, she said. The tree is refusing to answer. John didn't know what this means, but it seemed serious. Norrell walked to the place where Zane retrieved a staff from the tree. The place was fully closed, as if the tree hurriedly healed it. Norrell kept checking while speaking to the tree. Why are you hiding this from me? You don't hide anything. It is me. Don't take long, please. She spoke like a child conversing her angry parent, but John soon lost interest. The Altmare ancestor walked away too and arrived at the place where Zane opened up to and started analyzing the space. Norrell. Suddenly, the voice of a man called for the Green Lady. At the treasury's door was a tall man with a medium brown beard. He had 2 wooden twigs growing from his head like antlers. Thoron. Norrell reacted to him right away. You should be in bed, she said. No. Tell me. What did he take? The Sylvanar, head of Valenwood, walked in weakly with a grim face. There. But the tree won't tell me, Norrell said. Sylvanar Thoron paused in his place and let out a pained no. Thoron, what is wrong? Do you know anything? Norrell asked. I am sorry. I made a pact with the tree to keep a secret, Thorn said. Thoron made a sorry face, but Norrell was shocked. To keep a secret? From me? She said. I am sorry. The two acted as if he made the sin of his lifetime. Why? It is not Koff, it is not my secret. It is my teacher's. He told me to seal it somewhere safe. He said. Okay, lovebirds. Cut the drama. What was taken from here? John's patience ran out. I can't. It is a secret, Sylvanar Thoron said. Oh please. Let me guess. It is something which has necromancy and Manamarco in its description. John said. The Sylvanar stuttered on his words and didn't know what to say. I am right? Then there is no need to guess. Zane has the Staff of Worms. He is collecting Manamarco's artifacts. John said. He said, and turned to the Altmare ancestor. Where did he teleport to? John asked. She sighed and turned to him.
Hey God,
She said. Perfect. John smiled and turned to his companions. We're going back to Hammerfell. Chapter 464, A Night in a Tree. Many big thanks to at Darkenland on Pat Rayon. Zane was back in Hammerfell. It may come as a shock, but those who are involved will turn every stone to find him and understand what's going. As dangerous as Zane is, John was preparing his weapons and the rest of his gear when he started remembering how it all began. He wanted to keep Azura's star away from her influence, but instead, HR caused her divinity to be wounded. The fragment of Azura that was in the star drifted through the seas of oblivion to end up in the hands of Manamarco, who used it to fuel the ghost world and create an army of the dead for his cult. Things looked bleak for John when he was told that when a Daedra is offended, their retribution is a labor that must be done, else the offender will be damned forever in oblivion. The first labor, and one of the most dangerous ones, if he had to argue, was to help Isha go through the Shivering Isles, the realm of the mad god Shiagarath, and slay El Diablo. His friend John Battleborn was possessed by El Diablo, who happened to be a gigantic Daedric chicken that caused some sort of chicken madness in Riverwood. The labor was done without even John knowing it was a labor. He was even named the nephew of Shiagarath by a blind, idiotic mistake. The second labor marked the demise of John Dare. The true retribution came when the envious Thane Erikr of Hafingar's Solitude baited John by his brother Wulfur, who was led to a forsworn ambush. John managed to arrive in time as Wulfur was about to meet his end and save the day, but in a desperate attempt, the forsworn leader Alaric brought a mountain on the head of John Dare. The third labor was to escape the forsworn and avenge himself. John was desperate and in a bad shape after losing a foot, a few fingers and parts of his face, as well as being trapped in a briarheart tree, sucking away his life force. He managed to resist and survive for 2 months as he learned to feed on the tree in reverse. The tree mutated itself to the anomaly trapped in it, and a certain vine grew attached to John after sharing his astral energy. John managed to break free as he devoured all the trees in the Briarheart Grove, and as he escaped, he was forced to kill forsworn children in the process, as well as Alaric's brother. John escaped to Markarth, but he had that Briarheart vine leeching on him and locking away his magicka. Desperate, John made a deal with Molagbal, the nearest Daedric prince around, and met the Draemor Ezekiel. In order to attain revenge, John's only power was the mace of Molagbal and the Thursdayum he can shout. With just that, John obliterated the Forsworn in 2 separate battles, most notably the Battle of Forsworn John Dare that revealed his identity in Skyrim as Johnhild Firemane, the taboo child of Clan Firemane. In the last moments of the battle, John performed the Blood Eagle ritual execution on Alaric, offering his soul to Molagbal. Now that Molag received the souls and helped John attain his vengeance, he tricked John and sent his lieutenant vampire Lord Harkon Fokihar to collect John. The fourth labor was to escape Fokihar and save Winterhold from imminent danger. John broke free from the shackles of the Briarheart Vine after killing Alaric. He was taken by the vampire Lord Harkon to find his long-lost daughter Serana, who carries an important secret. John finds Serana and gets dragged to oblivion in the realm of Molagbal, called Harbor, to find the location of Harkon's wife. John convinced Serana to help him escape with Elder Scroll she had and reunited with his favorite Draemora, Ezekiel. Later on, He met with Sir Caldwell, and together they broke the Hollow City free from Cold Harbor, turned Zykel from a mere Draymora into a Daedric Titan, and created a very powerful staff through the power of an Elder Scroll. It was called the Elder Staff of Power and Fate, Pride. Later on, Jon escapes Cold Harbor, returns to Winterhold, heals himself fully, and meets the united power of the Nordic clans and 10 Thalmor Arch wizards, slaying them all and letting the Nords go free. He did so by tapping into the universal power of the Orbis and having a glimpse at the Tower of Chim. The fifth labor was to retrieve a Daedric weapon. He had to flee Skyrim to ease up the atmosphere after slaughtering so many. He was officially exiled, but it was a deal with the king to prevent Skyrim from any imperial oppression to affect the politics or the economy. Jon traveled to Whiterun, met some Morag Tong Sel, and found out that the weapon he is after is the most infamous ebony blade. Using his knowledge of the game, Jon stole it and rode to the eastern borders of Skyrim, where he had to meet with his old friend Isha from the first labor. The sixth labor was a joint effort between the laborers of Azura, Bothia, and Mephala, Jon, Isha, and the twins Mirren and Miranda. They were to serve the old woman of Mournhold, who put them under the leadership of Bothia's champion, Gollum. Many events happened, but in the end, Gollum came out as a traitor, and Jon replaced him as the champion of Bothia by slaying him and taking his armor, the Ebony Mail. Also, the old woman revealed himself to be the old Queen Berenzia, former queen of Morrowind and Wayrest. She rewarded Jon with the boots of the Apostle and the Old Man's coin, artifacts of the founding Emperor Tiber Septim. The seventh labor was to follow Isha. Mysterious as it sounded, Jon followed her across Cyrodiil and entered the Imperial City with his real identity to meet one of his lovers, Vittoria Vici, and become the Grand Champion of the Imperial Arena by slaying Darius. Afterward, he fled the Empire to Hammerfell to find that Isha's brother, Zane, was long since dead. Isha fell to agony, but Jon investigated, finding out traces of Sithis, Manamarco, and the Worm Cult in the Alakar Desert. Jon traveled outside the world through the chaotic realms of the Abyss to find a ghost world drifted away from another universe and was used by Manamarco to lock away Azura's divine fragment and an army of liches and undead. Jon destroyed everything in his wake and returned to Isha, who insisted on leaving Hammerfell. 8 months later, they were in Elsewhere practicing martial arts when a certain curse struck the borders of Elsewhere. Investigating, Jon and his group found out that Isha's brother, who was long thought to be dead, is the culprit. They chased him to Sylvanar, where he attacked Sylvanar Thoron to gain access to his Grottoak tree and take out an artifact of necromancy. The group had to fight both the Green Lady of Valenwood and the Mane of Elsewhere, as well as an elven ancestor from Alinar. After investigating, Zane seems to have returned to Hammerfell. And that's the recap. Human, I was there the whole time. Why do I have to hear you nagging about it? Because, my dear cat, I need someone to talk to. Also, remembering things like that before the finale is more dramatic, even if you see it unnecessary. The finale? What makes you so sure? Because everyone is fed up with these labors and I miss Skyrim so much. Don't you miss Alina, Jelinar, and the rest? No. Don't you miss the babies? Looks away. I knew it. Jon smiled. Wolf and Jorna should have a child by now. Also, Thor and Iden should have grown this much. Humph. Jon and Nefertiti were sitting together on a branch of the great Grottoak of Sylvanar. A trip to Hammerfell from here will need a lot to stock on. Also, Mirren and Miranda seem to have some business, such as notifying their master that they are on a trip and so on. Jon and Nefertiti spent the night together on a branch, staring at the moons. Back in the great Grottoak of Sylvanar, the Altmare ancestor sat alone in a room provided by the hosts. Last night, she who has lived for centuries felt for the first time in her life that she was a forgotten page in history. The elves of the Aldmeri Dominion may have always been viewed as fanatics, but she was one of the few who was there since the beginning of it all. Ancient she may be, but as the Altmere society progressed, they always valued the advice of the old, taking pride in it that they are the eldest of races, the most knowledgeable and wise across the ages. But is any of that true? The elves always proved to be superior, but the humans were there on every turn taking glory. Even though, those very humans always follow the path of the missing god through wars and destruction. Ruling Tamriel through Cyrodiil is the ultimate goal of all races. The humans kept the Ruby Throne for 4 millennials, with no elf ever succeeding to reach it. Even though they claimed greatness, the High Elves almost damned the world to oblivion twice and caused damage that no man could do. The Playmeld by Manamarco and the Oblivion Crisis by Maker Cameron. Both were Altmare, both opened the apocalypse gates to drag this world to oblivion. Compared to them, the men were blessed with heroes and divine powers. Saint Alessia, Remand Cyrodiil, Tiber Septim, the Eternal Champion, the hero of Kvatch, and finally there is talk about a man acquiring the tools of Kagranak and becoming a demigod in Skyrim. Just where is this world getting itself dragged to this time? She wondered. She tried to close her eyes, but as she did, she saw that scene once again and her heart ached. Blood, fire, and brass on an elven grove of cherry blossoms. The day her world burned when that tyrant marched to Alinar flying alongside the walking brass colossus. Every step the walking brass took left behind him a version of reality distorted and broken. She had to end it, kill Tiber Septim and shatter his totem, but that was a mere dream. She descended upon him with every Altmare ancestor there is. A man floating midair alone with a red legion and a brass tower faced them all by himself. No elven ancestor lasted more than a couple of sword strikes against him. She was the last to fall, and his sword had already cut deep in her. The last she saw was a walking tower laying waste to a mountain, removing it from existence. Then she remembers dying, but she didn't. She couldn't help but wonder how she survived since that day, but part of her knew of a dire truth. Something that shouldn't even have happened has affected her. She died, but she didn't because both realities happened. A dragon break. A series of temporal bifurcations leading to her death in a timeline, her escape in another, as well as many timelines where she is still fighting against Tiber Septim and the Numidium. It is why she is a weak ancestor. She was never whole since that day. Once that Nord teenager managed to pressure her in the fight last night, she felt a connection to those absent selves of hers once again. Her many versions, scattered across time, fighting the bitter fight, were all in the same mental resonation for the first time in years. But once that needle sword almost claimed her life from the very same spot she was stabbed by Tiber Septim, she lost all connection with her other selves. If she managed to fight more, the resonation would have increased, and she would have grown stronger with just fighting, but that is no longer possible. She can't go backward or forward. She can't achieve the level every ancestor seeks and break from the rules of the world to travel back to Etherius and join the other ancestors. She is just miserable. In this misery, she couldn't help but turn around and look at the door to her room. "You have been there for an hour now, just come in," she spoke. Her words were met with silence for a minute until her door was opened. "You too must have something to say." She spoke to the Altmare young man and woman whose faces were solid like stones. They exchanged stares at her until the man tossed some medallion towards her. She took it, getting her fingers, and looked at it closely. It was a medallion carrying the eagle sigil of the first Aldmeri Dominion. On its back was engraved the name of Aaron Arana Aldmeri, founder of the First Dominion. "The sigil of Her Most Magnificent Highness." She spoke, then looked at the two. "So you are the last two descendants?" "Mirren, Miranda." They both spoke out their names. "I see." She nodded. "I remember saving your father and mother from prosecution 160 years ago in Sentinel. We were told, the night of green fire," Mirren said. "For E42, the Thalmor royal family was hunted almost to extinction by the new Thalmor government for the crime of bending the knee to the Empire. The royal family dissidents who had fled to Sentinel from the Thalmor were attacked by Thalmor operatives. Their efforts to fight back against the Thalmor were in vain, and by the time Imperial Legion soldiers arrived, the entire refugee district of the city had been destroyed. The event became known as the Night of Green Fire due to the destructive magic attacks employed by both sides during the battle. Our parents told us that when they were children, they were saved by the white ancestor of the Misty Hills. We came to pay respect. Miranda spoke. I understand. How are your parents? The white ancestor asked. Dead. I am sorry. The white ancestor looked away, thinking of how she outlived the younger generations once again. Do you wish to avenge them? She asked.
No.
Miranda shook her head. Our parents forbade vengeance on us. Mirren continued. Shame. Aliner could have used saviors. The white ancestor said and tossed back the medallion to Mirren. Just make sure that the blood of Queen Erin remains. No blood on Tamriel is superior to yours. Unforeseen children. Current goal, 5 extra chapters. Next goal, 6 extra chapters. Pat/Rayon. com/Eldokmizi, remove / PayPal, plus $10 equals extra. Money with wings, money with wings. PayPal, me/Eldokmizi. Extras by votes, 5,000/8,000 ballot box with check, ballot box with check. Discord, GG/GKCKVA, 7S left speech bubble, left speech bubble. Twitter at Eldokmizi22, bird. Chapter 465, Zykel's Airlines. People, early access is now available. Next chapter is available on Patreon. I'll make sure to stock more. By the next day, the group was gathering in front of the main gate of the city of Sylvanar. The road was clear, and both the Sylvanar and the Green Lady were present, as well as the Mane and the White Ancestor. I can't do more but thank you and present you these gifts, Lady Isha. You are a welcome exception in Sylvanar. Sylvanar Thoron spoke to Isha after glancing at John. Even the Green Lady Norrell nodded to her in acknowledgement. Thank you. The couple showed a good attitude towards Isha, which is a good thing coming from the supreme rulers of Valenwood. On the other hand, John received their contempt as they glared at him from the side. John casually replied with a middle finger. Understanding his level of power, even the elite guards didn't want to meet eyes with him, so naturally he could do whatever he wants unless the power couple stand up for him. On the other hand, someone was really interested in John. Friend Krylin, you can't leave now. We still didn't have our spar. Main Topaz spoke. Dear Main, I would take you on any day, but we wasted as much time as it is. Zane should have already started wreaking havoc in Hammerfell at this rate. Such a shame. Fine, this one will come visit you one day. Where do you live? In Skyrim, I stay in Winterhold. In Elsewhere, I stay in Orcrest. In Hammerfell, I stay at the Citadel of Ebenarm. In Morrowind, I stay at Mournhold. In Cyrodiil, I stay at the Imperial City. In Oblivion, I stay at the Shivering Isles. Look, if you're close to any of those, ask about me. In any case, I'll be sending you a postcard of my whereabouts as soon as this matter is over. Moonshine. You really are an international celebrity, Krylin. Even the Thalmor intelligence has no fixed location on you. Huh. These amateurs. John and the Mane seem to be hitting it well. By the way, this one is wondering how will you do it. We can send some Thalmor operatives to your aid, but we can't move directly against that fellow Zane. The Mane said, we have a lot of allies in Hammerfell, and we don't really mix well with your Thalmor. However, there is a thing you can do. And what is that? You can put him on your most wanted list just below that fellow John Dare. Also, do me a favor and push John Dare to the top of the list. John said with a mischievous face. Foo. This one will see what he can do. John may have just used his connections to push himself to the top of the Thalmor most wanted list, so Mirren and Miranda were looking at him with dubious eyes. What? I'm a sore loser, get over it. Meanwhile, the group have finished up packing and waited for the mages to open up a portal to Hammerfell. The situation took a bit of time, but it was normal for such a long-distance portal to open. Until it took a bit too long. What's wrong with your mages, Sylvanar? Aren't they a bit too lax with practicing space magic? John asked. These are the best high mages in Valenwood. If you can do better alone, you are welcome to try. Sylvanar Thoron retorted. Fine. John took out his staff and walked between the mages, then synchronized his magic with them and started casting. A minute passed. Something is wrong. John blurted quietly. Ah! The Green Lady let out a fake laugh. What is wrong, Nord? You were just talk after all? Woman, pleasure us with your silence. John fired back. Let me see. The white ancestor walked past John and checked the portal spell herself. Something is indeed wrong, she said. The situation became weird. No one has figured out why the teleportation distance was not getting registered in the spell. The space may be sealed, the white ancestor said. Around the whole damn Hammerfell? John doubted. It is possible, in theory, she said. The situation was unprecedented. Sealing space is a hard thing to do, let alone sealing the space around a whole country. I will do a divination, the green lady said, and turned around to enter a grove not too far away. The others waited and started discussing the details. For such a select group of people to struggle with opening a portal, no matter what the method was used, it should be interesting to find out. An hour later, she came out panting and supporting herself on the trees. Norrell, what in oblivion did you go through? Her appearance was miserable, as if she has gone through the fight with John all over again. The others were shocked and hurried to her, but she took time to catch her breath before she speaks, and when she spoke, she gave the others a very bad feeling. Darkness. Something bad is awakening in Hammerfell. It feeds on souls, she said. By all means. John walked closer, asking her to continue. I don't know what is that. It is veiling most of Hammerfell and gathering the souls of the dead. Someone is casting a massive spell, she said. A spell of such a caliber was only seen back during the Tiber Wars. The white ancestor said, once, a slowed necromancer called Ngasta managed to create a soul snare spell around the whole Hammerfell. Soul snare? Mirren asked. A large-scale soul trap matrix that can soul trap anything that dies around a certain area. The spell that Ngasta created surely covered a large part of Hammerfell. John confirmed. In theory, if you manage to tweak such a spell, you can interfere with anyone trying to enter Hammerfell through teleportation by disturbing the mental connection, the white ancestor said. I think you are right, John added. The necromancer Ngasta was last seen in Stroz Mkai, so the core of his spell must be there. This is getting more complicated than what we thought, Isha said. Imagine a last labor for a man of Krylan's caliber. This should be a global disaster. Mirren sarcastically remarked. Not funny. I just want to finish this nasty labor business and go home, John shouted. John felt depressed now that the matter was getting more complicated by the second. What will you do, friend Krylan? This one can arrange you a portal to the nearest spot possible to Hammerfell, or even some escort if you were taking the road. The main said, Thank you, High Fluff, but I have my own methods. I'll be seeing you once all of this is over. John said farewells to the main. The others one said their brief farewells, but John had one man to say farewell to. Ilvirios, my dear guide, here is the rest of your pay. John tossed a bag of coin to Ilvirios Ulriric, the one who guided him through Elsewhere and Valenwood. A pleasure working with you. Hope to see you again. You as well. Farewell. Godspeed. John gathered with his group and took out the carriage from the cube. They went in before John, and he came to a certain spot at the carriage and pressed a button. I always wanted to use that, he said. John's carriage was equipped with various things, but this one was simply two large handles matter with reinforced materials coming from the top of the carriage. The others kept watching and waiting to see what absurdity will happen this time. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you today's carriage animal. Enthusiastic drum sound. Zykel. The void around John distorted, taking a gigantic form, and the veil of oblivion let through a large being. A feeling of dread and helplessness took over the main gate of Sylvanar. Those who were weak gave in and fell to their knees, hanging on a fine thread of sanity, but those who were strong took deep breaths and backed away. Zykel may have been a miserable Draemora before, but now he is a Daedric Titan thanks to John, and only John can bully him. Zykel's current power can put the white ancestor to disadvantage easily. John said something to Zykel, and the later couldn't help but drop his shoulders and obey John. He held to the two large handles above the carriage and waited for John's next order. John stood on the step leading inside the carriage and looked back at the main, the Sylvanar, the Green Lady and the White Ancestor whose faces were showing hints of realization. He then spoke in the most dramatic way he could muster. Ladies and gentlemen. In this daunting moment of scratching your brains, raw wondering how in the absolute fuckery did this come to be, I can't help but find myself quoting from Sir Alexander Dumas. How did I escape? With difficulty. How did I plan this moment? With pleasure. Zykel, stomp the gas, my good Titan. Reach me those clouds. Growl. Hearing John's speech, even Zykel was in a good mood to get out of here. He flapped his gigantic wings and carried the carriage up with John, who was waving down at the people looking at him. He rose up and faded in the sky heading northwest. Back in front of Sylvanar, the air remained frozen as the mane. The Green Lady and the Sylvanar felt like they saw a ghost. A Nord. A tall Nord with red hair that can summon a Daedric Titan. The Green Lady remembered some report. Please, don't tell me it is him. The Sylvanar also was familiar with the report. Wahahaha. The Mane couldn't help but to hold his stomach and roll on the ground. Just right now, they all realized they just come across John Dare. The John Dare. Few airlines can be considered fancy in the world, but surely Zykel Airlines was a revolution in the field. Zykel's flight speed in open air exceeded that Vulture Griffin of the Green Lady. Not a few hours passed, and they flew past Valenwood's Volquassen, the Tempest Island, Cyrodiil's Anvil, and entered the Abyssinian Sea from the Gold Coast. It then took them another couple of days to get a clear look of Strozmkai. Strozmkai, also called Sanloamkai in Yoku, meaning Sister of Thought, is an important tropical island off the southern coast of Hammerfell near the Cape of the Blue Divide. It is renowned for the completely steam-powered Dwemer ruins of Bzark and the observatory of similar design, containing a telescope and orrery. Much of Strozmkai's area is taken up by the city of Port Hunding, which has also been called Strozmkai at times. Its most famous landmarks include a statue of Frandar hunting in the harbor and a great palace to house the city's ruler. The small settlement of Saintsport is found at the southern tip of the island. There are very few other settlements, apart from the nomadic Redguard campsites. The group landed not too far from the island, but John maintained coverage and snuck inside the island away from the city port, yet despite his efforts, someone was waiting for him. We have been expecting you, John Dare. Priestess Urania met him at the shore. Current goal, 4 extra chapters. Next goal, 5 extra chapters. Patreon.com/Eldokmizi. Remove. PayPal, plus $10 equals extra. Money with wings, money with wings. PayPal. Me/Eldokmizi. Extras by votes. 5,000/8,000 ballot box with check. Ballot box with check. Discord. GG/GKCKVA. 7S left speech bubble. Twitter at Eldokmizi22. Bird. Chapter 466, Strozmkai. This is gold. 5 extra large with fries, and Coke 2 at Space Ghost 69 at Sakage at the Bjorns at Valindrel at Christian Hinkenmeyer. Is available on P4 Tray 0N. We have been expecting you, John Dare, said Priestess Urania, prophet of Azura. Long time no see, Urania. You sure look skinny. Azura must have been sending you on too many errands lately. How are things, woman? John bypassed formalities, held Urania by the shoulders, and hugged her. She felt strange and uncomfortable, but when John let her go, she was already out of breath. Sorry, a bit excited to see you. Is there any update on my labor? A new riddle? A mystery? Or you finally are going bow point me to a spot where smash some skulls? John asked. Behind him, the other 3 crawled out of the carriage and Mirren started throwing up. John looked back and nodded. They seem to be sky-sick. 3 days of flying are hard indeed. Do you have any mint, Urania? She sighed and massaged her temples, remembering how mind-consuming it is to deal with John. The situation is more complicated than it should be. Lady Azura has directed me here with a set of tasks for you, John Dare. Urania said. Okay. I'm all ears. Escort me to Saintsport. The prophetess of Bothia is waiting for us over there, she said. Excuse me. Isha stood up, supporting herself on her spear after being dizzy from Zykel's terrible landing. Rest now, Isha. John gave her a hand.
No.
She refused and walked to Urania. You? Tell me what you know. What is going on with Zane, and why is he acting like that? It was the first time she met someone connected to the Daedra after she found out her brother was alive. This was her first chance to inquire about what's going on. The Maiden of Bitter Mercy. So it is you? Urania glanced at the spear Isha had and made a grim face. Thanks to the investigation conducted by John Dare, we found out that your brother is also laboring for Clavicus Vile as soon as you did. Right now, we don't know how much he is involved with the worm cult or what is their goal. The only one who knows more than us is the prophetess of Bothia, currently in Saintsport. She was doing a divination for a year about this case. Urania seemed serious about what she said. The party of four understood that they are jumping right in the middle of action after that unsettling flight. I understand, John said. He looked at the sky and narrowed his eyes. The horizon was abnormally bleak. Urania, what do you know? He asked. She stood beside him looking at the murky sky. It all started 5 days ago. 5 days ago, on the 3rd of Rain's Hand, April, Urania was teleported by Azura's power to Hammerfell. It was a normal day until the sky started to darken abnormally and fear struck the hearts of people. Not knowing why or how, the undead sightings started to increase dramatically to the point where some villages were raided by undead and necromancers. Those who know history recalled the event when the sky darkened in gloom, just like that, and dated it to the years of the Redguard resistance led by the hero Cyrus against Tiber Septim. This was the Soul Snare spell, a spell that can take the souls of any dead and trap it by the caster's wish. On the same day, the Order of Arche and the Citadel of Ebonarm sent out their fighting priests and battlelords to defend the lands from the threat of necromancers. All the cities and towns closed their doors and fortified their walls. The raids increased by each day, and the situation became serious. Some tried to track the source of the Soul Snare spell to Strozmkai, some parts in the Alakar Desert, near Sentinel, and some other places, but no one managed to survive these errands. Even the Empire moved the 7th Legion under the command of a general to secure the borders. Yesterday, most of the connection means between major cities were cut as the Soul Snare matrix hindered many magics that rely on mental connection such as conjuration, telepathy, and teleportation. In short, the situation is dire. Right now, we cooperated with some factions to fend off the necromancers from some places, but the bigger picture is not looking good. I see. John nodded. I am not certain what goal does Zane have, but he is serving both the Worm Cult and Clavicus Vile. Isha, I am sorry, but we have a bigger hurdle than we anticipated. It's okay. I am just going to help, but when my brother shows up, leave him to me, she said. Are you sure? Mirren asked. We will support you, Miranda insisted. Just leave him to me. I must confirm something, she said. It's all right. We will only watch your back. John patted her shoulder and sighed. He then looked at his companions, and a sense of guilt overtook him. They were all laborers and did a lot to rid themselves of the Daedra's dominance, but now they are dragged back to his labors. Guys, this is my labor. I am sorry to drag you into this, so if you can just find a place to rest, I'll go sort things out. We're doing this too. Mirren spoke out. Yes, we have already decided to help you out before we even leave Morrowind, Miranda said. Isha looked at John and sighed. And I can't simply walk out of this one, she said. John looked solemn and nodded as he looked away. Now that I think about it, whatever I am dragging you in now is nothing compared to what is going to happen a year from now, John said and smiled.
Fuck off, man.
Mirren didn't feel good about the way John smiled. Now as his mood improved, John turned to Urania. What is the plan? He asked. I don't need a vision from Lady Azura to tell you. Break the Soul Snare and stop Zane somehow, she said. Sounds simple, but I was asking about what should we do now. Right. I am heading to Saintsport village nearby. The vision led me here to meet you, but we need to start from somewhere. Escort me to Saintsport, rest for a few hours, meet Bothia's prophetess, then see how she directs us. Arrhenius said, and turned around for her mule that was tied nearby. Oh, by the way. She stopped and looked for John. The road to Saintsport is filled with undead and necromancers. Prepare to fight. John and the others looked at each other and nodded. A team fight. What's the formation? Mirren asked. John will handle the numbers as usual, Isha said. No problem. You will be the rear guard. John said. Indeed. My brother will kill the strong enemies and I will scout. Miranda finished the formation. I feel good about this, John said, and checked his options through the staff. I can barely summon anything from Oblivion, but necromancy is running wild. He waved his staff in a cool way, and the void started distorting everywhere. Almost 100 Wrathmen appeared and gathered around John. He wasn't using Wrath early on to not attract bad attention. You will use necromancy and dark magic. I have learned a lot of bad guy spells from the tomes I looted in the ghost world. Looking forward to it. The gloomy sky over Hammerfell didn't spare even a lonely island such as Strozm Kai. This darkness brought about fear and undead in every part of the island. Small villages around the island were wiped from existence. Armies would loot and raid, but the undead only kill and kill and kill. Dead children, dead women, dead elderly, and dead men were all gathered in piles for the necromancers to practice on. The worm cult has officially started a full-on attack at Hammerfell. In a tiny agricultural village on the road to Saintsport, a cult officer gathered some acolytes in the center of the village to see how their practice is going. Listen, you mutts. To reach a good position in the cult, you need to control not only many undead, but also good ones. Worm zombies are good, but you need to master the formula to create them out of dead bodies and control as much as you can. The officer said. The acolytes around him nodded. Good. As an officer, I can control up to 25 undead perfectly. If I put more effort, I can even reach 40. Wow. 40. Amazing. The acolytes were taken aback by their boastful superior. Now, no need to be shocked. Others can do better. The important thing is to practice. See these bodies? Extract the skeletons, make worm zombies or flesh atranax for all I care about. The important thing is to control as much as you can. Now get to work, he said. The acolytes were excited to make good undead out of these corpses of villagers. They can have nice lives once they reach the rank of their officer in charge. The best of those acolytes can control up to 10 undead after all. Seeing the acolytes work hard, the officer retreated to a house he is stationed in. It has been years since he joined the cult, but a lot of times has passed, and he still wasn't allowed to summon a single undead from the realms of Lord Manamarco. He always heard and dreamt about having one of those custom-made undead, but he never got the qualifications to command one, and was left to train those mediocre acolytes. Things were miserable, but he had a firm belief that maybe, just maybe, one day, a good acolyte will rise among his group and help him get some rewards and benefits to boost his standing in the cult. And lo and behold, this moment was right in front of him. It was a certain undead roaming the village they were in. This undead was as what he can describe as a product of quality. Finally, he got his hands on a talent. Wait, stop. Who did this? Who made that undead? He ran out of the house shouting as soon as he spotted that undead. It had some air to it, looking all warrior-like, wearing old armor and holding a big axe. Its bones glowed in violet hue, but that wasn't anything to bother with right now. The one who made such a powerful undead a genius without any doubts. Which one of you made this? The officer asked his acolytes, who looked clueless. We never saw such an undead before, so we thought it is yours, sir. An acolyte replied. What? No, it is not mine. The officer denied and turned to the undead behind him. What are you? He looked closer, then started to check the undead in front of him. But something happened. In one move, the undead moved its axe and beheaded the man. Silence. Utter silence took over the acolytes as soon as they looked behind that undead. There was a large number from the same type of undead marching to the village from the south, more from the west, some from the east. The acolytes were terrified as they looked to the north only to see one man in full ebony armor. He walked towards them alone. "Good day. I was wondering if I can have some directions to Saintsport village." He spoke. Hearing the man, the shivering acolytes only pointed to the northeast. "Oh, thank you for your kindness and sorry about your friend," the man said and turned to walk away, but then he paused and turned to them again. "Almost forgot. You are cult scum. I have to kill you," he said, raising up his staff. "Sorry." His staff descended on the ground, sending a magic wave beneath their feet. By the next second, spikes of bone rose up from the ground. Boneyard. Most of the acolytes forfeited their lives to this spell. Those who survived started running around. "Nope, you're not leaving." John swung his staff to the side with a death scythe, emerging from it, harvesting the lives of every acolyte on the range of 5 meters. Grim scythe. 2 acolytes remained. One fell on his ass, wetting himself, and the other ran towards John with a knife. John simply cast a spell that shot out a skull towards the attacking acolyte and killed him on the spot. Bone spirit. The last acolyte was crying and begging for his life, but John felt annoyed by him. "Don't worry, you will talk and you will die. I don't play with my prey," John said, taking out lust. P4 Tray 0N. Shorterl. @/QAKRS. PayPal for gifts. Shorterl. @/DKYBM. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7S. Chapter 467, Little Bothia. On P4TRE0N. The desert land of Hammerfell was a source of inspiration to many artists and poets in years. So to say, seeing the bright land that always bathed in sunlight covered under thick layers of gloom was very disturbing. It is as if the world has lost its colors and became paler and paler. Even the heat of the desert went away, replaced by the cold winds carrying the stench of death. "John, have you found any survivors?" Mirren called. "No. Everyone was slaughtered way before I got here," John said as he checked with a detect spell. "Fucking oblivion. They didn't even spare young kids." Mirren looked at Child's corpse with a grim face. John and Isha felt a mental strain from the scene. Such a crime can't be forgiven. They know that because they bore such a crime before. "Disintegrate the corpses," Priestess Urania spoke from the back. "What?" Mirren retorted. "Disintegrate them? These were people. With just some magic spells, we can give them a proper burial in a minute. Ain't I right, John?" John didn't reply and looked away with a solemn face. Burying the dead is no longer an option. The soul snare spell doesn't just gloom the sky and disturb some magic, it makes the dead walk again, Urania said. As it seemed, this spell is more sinister than it already is. John didn't like disintegrating the dead, but he just had to do it. Those who died would rather turn into white ash just like that and scatter with the wind instead of rising again in agony as zombies. The past 5 days caused the Redguard to start burning the fallen, as Urania mentioned. It wasn't the way Redguards did things, but it was the only choice. No one wanted to die under the effect of the soul snare. "What have you found from the prisoner you took?" Urania asked John. "Not much. Most operatives of the worm cult were pulled from all the worm cells around Tamriel to join some important ritual. But the curious thing is that this soul snare matrix wasn't their plan A," John said. "What do you mean?" Isha asked. "From what I put together, their plan A was to power up some sort of a ritual by the divine fragment of Azura that I freed from the ghost world. Now that I have disturbed plan A, plan B was put into action by gathering as many souls as they can. That's why they used the soul snare," John said. "I sort of get it," Urania said. "So, the worm cult lost their source of power and now are violently looking for a new one." "Yes. They always acted quietly, but their impulsive actions only mean one thing," John remarked. "What is that?" Urania seemed curious. The others fell into thoughts, but Miranda spoke. "They are running low on time. she said.
Indeed.
John agreed. They have a certain time limit they are committed to. If we disturb them as fast as we can foil their plans. The atmosphere started to become more serious by the second. Strozmkai was just a small island, but it was filled with necromancers and undead. Foiling the worm cult plans is way easier said than done. A few hours passed after the slaughtered village events. Arania led the team right towards Saintsport. Saintsport is a small settlement located on the southern tip of Strozmkai. It contains a port, a lighthouse, and the square of Lecky, a large shrine dedicated to Michaela Lecky. The town was named in honor of Lecky, saintess of the spirit sword. The town was fortified by the local militia after the events of the undead outbreak. Thanks to the port this village has, they managed to provide themselves with food and water from the mainland and even received a merchant from Cyrodiil. Currently, the village chief was the one leading the defense, but some days before the undead outbreak, a child came to the village with some monks saying that they are here to warn the village from imminent danger. After the outbreak, those monks gained some popularity and even the village chief had to listen to them. The thing about those monks was a particular child leading them. She was an imperial girl 10 years of age with a bald head and a weird appearance. She had tattoos on every inch of her body. She wore bracelets and anklets of gold as well as a light robe of yellow, brown, and red lehenga koli-like dress. That child lit up a brazier of flame, fed it with her magic, and kept dancing in front of the flame in a frenzied manner. She sang in incomprehensible words not from any language in the world, but from words she alone made up and understood. The more she dances, the more frenzied the monks around her dance, and the more they beat their drums and chant around the flame. The common people looking at them from afar didn't approach or act hostile towards them. Those crazy monks and child have saved the village many times in those 5 days. Every time the undead showed up, the local militia was ready, and that's because of the child. She would always predict any undead raid. The refugees that came to the town were always suspicious of her, and some even complained, but the locals were really overprotective of the child that can be considered their lifeline now. At the end of the 5th day, that child started shouting and screaming again. She fell off and stood up in actions that defied physics and kept speaking. The South. He comes from the South. He comes from the South. He is here. The South. Clear for him. Let him hear. He comes. She comes. It is beginning. The child's voice felt as if the devil was possessing her throat and speaking through it. The village chief who heard her ran to the south with his militia, trying to understand what manner of he was the girl mentioning. He was not far away, walking in full armor with a very long sword resting on his shoulder and a cloak not moving with the wind. The dark knight that marched towards Saintsport appeared with a woman riding a mule, another with a long spear, and 2 tall girls with slim figures and fading presences. That group approached the town with another layer of gloom lurking above them, making every single member of the local militia perspire beads of cold sweat. Those people were by no means ordinary. Beings like those are probably monsters who just walked out of a battlefield. The survival instincts of those militia members told them not to move, not to act, not to react. John walked in by lifting the barricade around the village entrance with telekinesis and walking past simply. Well met, Redguard. I trust the dead won't give the living much trouble now that we cleared the area around. Rest well for the night. The man in ebony said that he took care of the undead that were terrorizing Saintsport just like that. On any day, this man would be considered the hero of the village, and they would throw him a celebration near the shrine of the saintess, but the mood wasn't right for any sort of celebration. Thank you, sir. The village chief thanked him, but the man didn't ask for a reward and headed inside. In the village square, there were refugees and some locals minding their own business when all stopped to see what manner of strangers walked in the village. In times like these, people must be warier of other people more than monsters and threats. Thieves and marauders thrive in times of need, and the true mettle of men shows its color during hardships. Thankfully, the band of warriors didn't seem like a group of evildoers. John felt the unrest in the villagers' eyes, but his aura was hard to suppress, especially after killing those necromancers. He had to calm down his mood first, but the gloomy weather only made his mood murkier. It was then when he spotted the child covered in tattoos and dancing in front of the flame. The way the girl moved seemed comical and lifted his spirit a lot. "I know that dance," John said. "What is it?" Mirren asked. In Skyrim, the druids would do some divination rituals like that to predict harvest and rain. Druidism is one thing, but here in Hammerfell, they have a dance called Tsar. You are not much into divination? Yes, it is the only archetype in mysticism I couldn't even comprehend. However, my wife is skilled in it. She would do rituals like these all the time. John had a good memory of Alina, who would always visit Kynesgrove for these kinds of things. Meanwhile, the girl dancing around the brazier stopped what she was doing as she felt John's presence. "You have arrived." The girl turned around and looked at John with a bright face. She jumped off the platform she was dancing on and ran towards John. Once she arrived, she threw herself hugging him as if he was someone she missed for a long time. John was confused by the girl who barely reached his waist. "I missed you so much," she said. "I haven't been able to look at you for the past 7 days." "They always tell me danger is coming, and I need to protect this place. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't know you were coming." John blinked a few times. For a moment there, John was totally clueless about his situation. He looked around him to see Mirren and Miranda as clueless as he is. Arania was acting naturally, but there's someone who didn't. Isha was shocked as if she has seen a ghost. She grasped her spear and retreated carefully. "John, get away from her. Hurry." She even shouted. To see someone as hardy as Isha feel this threatened, John put his trust in his companion and blinked away from his place by 10 meters, leaving the girl to hug air. Mirren and Miranda did the same and took distance. Only Arania let out a heavy long sigh, predicting the confusion that will happen next, but she didn't even bother to stop it. Meanwhile, Isha's frustration seemed clear. "You. Who the fuck are you?" Isha asked, letting out a heavy domineering wave of aura. The abnormality seemed clear when the girl withstood Isha's aura like the breeze. She was by no means ordinary. At first, she was confused, but then she smiled at Isha and the others. Other than them, the whole village froze in terror. The little bald tattooed imperial girl had a composed air around her. Her tanned imperial skin and her colorful hazel eyes showed wisdom beyond her age. Once she spoke, no one managed to keep a composed head like her. "What is it, silly? Do you want to kill me once again?" "Kill her, once again." The words made even John think and rethink the situation. However, seeing the shocked look on Isha's eyes, he couldn't help but believe what the girl said. The whole situation of Isha's labors was because she killed a child from Bothia's cult who was important to Bothia. Now, this child admitted being the one Isha killed. Reviving the dead should be something easy for a Daedra like Bothia, but there was clearly more to it. "Ha ha ha." The girl laughed in a victorious tone, as if her mischief has worked. "What are you?" John spoke in an indifferent attitude. The girl turned to him with a natural smile. "I apologize. Since I know a lot about everyone I meet in advance before I meet them, I tend to act familiar around them. Let me introduce myself," she said, then walked closer to John. "My name is Bothia. PayPal for gifts. PayPal. Me/Eldokmezi. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7S. Chapter 468, The Truth Behind Everything, a double chapter, is available on P4Tray0N. Thanks to @Jack for joining on P4Tray0N, different from @Jack. Also, this chapter is a big revealing chapters. Don't hold back your paragraph comments. Part 1. My name is Bothia. A girl so petite and childish declaring with a voice of a kid that she is the Daedric prince of deceit, conspiracy, secret plots of murder, assassination, treason, and unlawful overthrow of authority. Despite the frightening atmosphere she had, John found her declaration adorable. "You are not Bothia," he said. The girl tensed up and looked at him with eyes on the verge of tears. "And no, I am Bothia," she said. "You are not," he replied. "I am," she insisted, stomping the ground hard.
No.
John said after taking a closer look. I, sob, but that's me." The girl looked at him and started crying. How the situation reached this point was incomprehensible to most of the people witnessing it, but John removed his mask and showed a wide smile in front of the crying girl. The people around started looking at him with judging eyes, but he didn't even bother. "Brat, those puppy eyes will never ever work on me," he said, taking pride in his immunity to the puppy eyes heresy. "What, damn it? I forgot about that." All of a sudden, the girl dropped her act. John didn't retreat his widening smile, for he had the cat faith that protected him, but the others were so taken aback, not believing that a child would use such a technique to trick adults without them finding out. It can't be every single time someone uses the puppy eyes. It turns out to be a lie. Mirren himself admitted falling for it. "That's why you should drink in Puppy Tears mug as well as Feminist Tears mug." John held up his two favorite mugs, each in a hand, showing them around and making himself glow with magic. "Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. I am getting a merch vibe here." His inspiring appearance gave birth to a new faith in this desolate part of the world, but that's a story we are avoiding. Clap, 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 clap. The young girl started clapping while completely enthralled by John's teachings. "Amazing. I've seen you give those lessons multiple times, but seeing it in reality is not like the visions. I now understand," she said. "Haha, good kid." John was wholeheartedly pleased, but he noticed Isha's glare towards him for diverting the subject. "Okay, him. So, brat, who are you?" She smiled calmly and introduced herself. "I am Bothia," she said. This again. Isha was not taking this answer well. "Wait." Miranda seemed to have understood it. "You are the prophetess of Bothia, right?" "Yes," the girl nodded. "And you were named after Bothia, right?"
Indeed.
The girl said with a cheeky smile. "See." Miranda looked at John and the others. A strange silence took over for a while. "Aha." And they all understood it a bit later. "Stinking brat. You were playing a trick on me all that time." John didn't take it well. "Teehee." The girl acted all cheeky and cute. "More importantly, are you really the one Isha killed?" Mirren focused on the subject. The girl stopped her foolish act and nodded with a natural face. She then showed a part of her abdomen with a scar on it. "It was almost 3 years ago. That woman carrying a spear entered our cave in a frenzy and started killing. By Bothia, I have never seen such a beautiful sight in my life." She said the last part with the temperament of a bloodthirsty maniac rather than a child of her age. "And how in the blazes did you come back?" Isha asked. "Lord Bothia sent me back. A Daedric prince can revive his followers as long as they claim their souls. The situation wasn't easy, since everyone I knew was killed, but it was all worth it when I managed to take a glimpse of him." Bothia said, pointing at John. "A glimpse? At me?" John asked. "Yes. You see, death is not an end but rather an elevating experience. You go to places and see things not bound by physical realms or world laws. Some find their way to the afterlife where things make more sense. Others drift in an agony of their making when their souls know how corrupt they are. On the other hand, children like me get a whole different experience. We drift in the river of souls entwined with the river time. Past, present, and future, we see things and relive moments. Sometimes we take different shapes and experience other lives. All this and that was part of the experience of death. Well, until Lord Bothia claimed my soul and returned me back. I may look like 10 years old. I may have been revived only a few hours after my death, but those few hours were years in different realities. I think someone here can relate to what I just said." Her words were not that of a 10-years-old child as she revealed wisdom, not that of worldly knowledge. Things untold and visions beyond the world. She is 10 years of age, but she can't count her real age if she included the time after her death and revival, as it was an out-of-time experience. She even looked at John, claiming he can relate to her experience, but he kept a tight mouth and didn't say a word. Those things she said were about losing the I and experiencing the all. Becoming one with everything through molding one's mind into the consciousness of the aka, the time. A selflessness of existence to surf within the dream. The heavy mood caused by her words was shaken once John decided it was over. So that's it. Little Bothia over here is someone who knows things, right? You came back from the unknown, or whatever that mumbo-jumbo was. John said. Call it whatever you like. She said. So, I hope you forgive Isha for killing you once. No. The girl stopped John. I must thank her. Okay, that's not how she feels about killing a child. John sighed. Anyway, why were you named Bothia? When I was a newborn, my parents were the heads of the cult, and as their child, I was offered to Bothia and blessed at infancy. My parents and our local cult prayed for Bothia, threw me to the point where they forgot to give me a name and kept being prayed to instead. By time, I only responded to the name Bothia as my own, and so I became Bothia. John didn't know how to respond to that. He only smiled wryly and gave a nod. Thankfully, the meeting passed smoother than I thought, Arania said as she approached Bothia. Arania, long time no see. You look skinny. Bothia said. Ugh. Arania rolled her eyes as Bothia copied John's attitude from earlier this morning. Lady Azura's champion and laborer will be relying on your help, Priestess Bothia. I hope you act for the best of our cause. Arania said. Azura's laborer is Bothia's champion. I know what I'm doing here. Bothia said. Then please, by all means. Our laborer. Priestess Arania, the standing of a champion is higher than the standing of a laborer. Please address the champion accordingly. Humph. His vice is not fully redeemed, so until then, he is our laborer. I see. Wait. If I remember correctly, Azura's star was taken back by Azura. Shouldn't the holder of the star be the champion? That got me thinking. He holds the ebony mail. So he is Bothia's champion. Does this mean he is no longer Azura's champion? Blasphemous brat. Sagihag. And the two priestesses started fighting over John. Daedra cults may ally with one another, but they are still different cults in the end of the day. Azura's cult is more of a natural and acceptable religion, as their practices don't go further than praying to the magic of dusk and dawn, dressing fancy, and acting like peacocks. On the other hand, Bothia's cult is a bunch of assassins, mercenaries, politicians, and all manner of people who take conspiracies and lies as means to ends. The interests of the two cults may not cross one another, but they still look down on anyone other than themselves. Let's just get down to business, shall we? John spoke. What is the situation? Bothia and Arania ceased their clash as John spoke. It was Bothia's turn to clarify things. Undead, worm cult, soul snare. What exactly do you want to know? She said. John looked at Isha and nodded to her. She was in a bad mood after discovering that her labor was because she killed a girl who can be revived, but she let out a long sigh. The past is the past now. Nothing can be done about it. She looked at Bothia and found it hard to speak to her, but she spoke anyway. Tell me about Zane, she said. Bothia made an understanding face and pointed Isha to the fire brazier she was dancing around just now. It is a depressing story, but you already know that, she said and threw something in the fire, making it burn more. I have been on divination for some time, but as soon as we got an identity on the unknown laborer, I managed to understand a lot. Let me show you, Bothia said, and the fire started to dance. Part 2. Zane hated lycanthropy more than anything. Many creatures of the night met their demise to the pointy end of his spear. His fame as a battlelord outshined his peers and other generations of battlelords, guaranteeing him the position of the next war chief of the Citadel of Ebonarm, but some were envious. Those envious peers of his decided to lure him out to the heart of Alakar by telling him that Isha went on a dangerous hunt alone. Once he reached her, he found her captured in the middle of an old ruins. There, he was bound and cursed by what he hates the most, lycanthropy. Here is where the story they knew ends, and a different story begins. The magic Zane was cursed with is called hate, something that draws the thing one hates the most from the deepest parts of the void, the domain of Sithis. Whatever is taken from the void gets merged to the cursed, making them inseparable. That day, Zane turned into a werewolf, went on a rampage, and killed the ones who kidnapped Isha and cursed him. But one survived. That was the mastermind behind Zane's curse. Her name is Dalilah. Dalilah is a battlelord from the Citadel, known to be a very beautiful woman, but appearances can be deceiving. She was a sleeper worm, an agent of the worm cult that gets planted in certain organizations from a young age to grow in ranks and provide intel and recruits to the worm cult. This Dalilah was there when John entered the tournament he sponsored to become the Grand Champion of the Imperial Arena. After she saw John there, she contacted Grand Champion Darius, by that time, and offered him a reward for the body of John Dare. The worm cult was into such business to provide their undead horde with the best corpses they can command. Darius was a supplier of strong fighters and has dealt with the cult for years without knowing. Back to Zane's story. When Dalilah cursed Zane, she was at a safe distance from the curse manipulating the whole process. The important thing is that her actions had a reason and a purpose. The reason why Zane was cursed was because of his great hatred towards werewolves, as he became one of them with the power of the void. His type of transformation was exceptional among all the children of the night, and his powers were grim. He can't be easily killed. He can regenerate like a troll, and even if his heart, spine, brain, or anything was damaged, the curse would reform it once again. Zane was aware of that as he tried to take his own life away from his wife and sister, but to no avail. At those times, Dalilah was watching her monster grow in both power and desperation. She wanted to give him even more power, but also erase every shred of humanity within him and create a body fit for her ultimate goal. She started to lure him towards very grim solutions for his curse. She used her agents to direct him as healers and mystics until he was led to the Daedric Prince of Wishes, Clavicus Vile. A prior arrangement was sealed with Clavicus Vile, so when he heard Zane's wish, he offered him something. What if you become a vampire? You can't be a werewolf if you are a vampire. That's what Vile suggested. It was common knowledge for a battlelord such as Zane, and he even tried it, but no vampire was strong enough to transform him. The only solution was a flask of blood retrieved from an ancient vampire from Skyrim, the blood of the ancient. Its cost was 7 tasks Zane must do for Clavicus Vile called the Labors. Zane accepted. He took the ancient vampire's blood and drank from it. Did it work? No, it killed Zane. He was escorted back to his house dying and pale to the point of blue. This was the memory that Isha remembered vividly, the day her brother died. And it was as she believed. The real Zane died that day. What she doesn't remember was the time since she met Vile's dog, Barbas, that hypnotized her and messed with her memories. She then went on the quest that led her to labor for 2 years, retrieved the Spear of Bitter Mercy, and killed the priestess of Bothia. At that time, Dalilah has recovered Zane, or rather what is left of him, the body affected by both lycanthropy and vampirism. A hybrid, Dalilah has managed to create a freak out of Zane's body that carried a living soul of a werbeast and the death aptitude of a vampire. Something with horrific powers, invulnerability, focus, and intelligence. That body's purpose was to be a vessel for Mannimarco's reincarnation. It has risen from its grave so powerful and strong that no matter what, nothing can kill it. But as expected of Clavicus Vile, most of his deals have something written in secret ink. The deal between Clavicus Vile and Mannimarco was to provide Mannimarco a suitable body to send a reincarnation of himself in every few years. It happened with the hero of Kvatch when he faced a necromancer called Mannimarco, while the real one was already a chim long ago. It was the same case this time too, but Clavicus Vile had a claim on Zane. Zane's end of the bargain, which was not yet fulfilled, was to labor, else Mannimarco can never send a reincarnation of himself in the body. To solve that, Clavicus Vile has let back remnants of Zane's to act as the puppet strings. Zane's brutality as a warrior, his skills, his powers, all under the full control of Clavicus Vile. As everyone thought he was dead and Isha was trapped in a plot to labor for 2 years, Clavicus Vile had all the fun time he wanted to play with the hybrid he created, Zane. Clavicus Vile had a list of artifacts he sought after, but also respected Mannimarco's wishes to gather his most 3 prized artifacts: the Bloodworm Helm, the Staff of Worms, and the Necromancer's Amulet. Other than that, Zane's first labor was to retrieve King Orgnum's coffer, to Clavicus Vile, a coffer that can create gold from naught every day, making its owners able to put the wealthiest of merchants to shame. The second labor was to retrieve the last remaining dragon horn, one of the legendary artifacts created primarily by the Dragon Guard and used as weapons against the dragons. The third labor was to retrieve an Elder Scroll known as the Elder Scroll of the Forgotten. It contains information that is very crucial to the Empire to the point where they will kill for. The fourth labor was to retrieve the Deadland Hammer, a hammer associated with Mehrunes Dragon's realm and capable of creating iron Atronax. The fifth labor was to retrieve the Flask of Lilandril. It is a magical flask that absorbs and reflects the magic of all kinds. The sixth labor was the Bloodworm Helm, the Staff of Worms, and the Necromancer's Amulet. Until now, Zane has gathered 2 of the 3 but was interrupted by John and his team. Every plan Clavicus Vile and Mannimarco came up with was in jeopardy now as Azura, Bothia, Mephala, and Shiagarath started showing movements. It was wise to retreat to Hammerfell, harness the battlefield to their preferences, and wait for the last laborer of the opposite faction to come. The Soul Snare was active and Hammerfell was thrown into chaos. What waits is Zane, Delilah, the Worm Cult, a horde of undead, Mannimarco, and finally, Clavicus Vile. The dancing fire ceased its visions. Despite being around the fire, the weather dropped a few degrees around those who just watched what Bothia just shown. To sum it up, Zane's hate was used against him, turned into the first ever werewolf-vampire hybrid, and was controlled by Clavicus Vile to retrieve things for him until Mannimarco can send his reincarnation into Zane. And that's how things happened. The mystery that made us go in circles all that time is no longer a mystery, Bothia said, and looked at the ones surrounding her. All is revealed. Mirren was horrified. Miranda was covering her gaping mouth in shock. John felt like a mountain collapsing on his head. But there was Isha. Isha has taken too much and suffered the most. First, it was her brother getting taken from her. Then she was sent in labors for 2 years going through whatever horrors she went through. Then she returned to find her brother is dead, suffered a mental shock, found her brother still alive and tried to kill her, and now that. She endured like a camel, but the straw that broke her back was actually falling thunder. She collapsed on her knees crying and wailing. It was finally there. The emotion. The reaction. The scream of salvation. She knew in her heart that it was the truth. She was set free from all the lies and secrets. For the first time in 2 years and 9 months, she was crying as she should have all along. Not frozen in denial. Not raging in anger. Not gratified in disbelief. Not silent in depression. But free in acceptance. Her brother who heard her first words, who supported her first steps, who put in her hand the first spear, who healed her first training wound, who took from himself and put in her plate. He was in a great deal of injustice. He was used like a tool and deprived of everything. Now that is all clear. All the hatred found a target. All the pain found the purpose. All the blood found a vengeance. She cut her hands, letting her blood flow in the fire, and she swore revenge by blood and fire. She would purge those who did that to her brother from the face of Nirn. Then she passed out from exhaustion. When she woke up, she saw the sky gloomy red as she was sleeping on the sand. She looked to the side to see the others all there sitting and eating to retrieve their stamina for the coming grand battles. I've sent out Wrath, Jax, and Nefertiti with 300 Wrathmen, Bone Men, and Mist Men. Violent clashes are occurring everywhere, but we have prisoners. John spoke to the young Bothia while showing her a small light screen that viewed an image to Strozmkai from above. Wow, seeing you in action is a whole different thing than divination. Please, teach me. Little Bothia played around John like a child, nothing compared to how she acted some time ago. The village is a safe place for operating in Strozmkai. We still need to contact Port Hunding to gather the forces of the island behind us, Mirren suggested. Great idea. Seeing her friend, seeing her family already in action, she couldn't help but join in. Why is the sky this red? She asked. That's how the night looks like under the effect of the soul snare matrix. John replied as he walked towards her. At day it is gloomy gray, and at night it is gloomy red. He walked to her, offering a hand. How ominous, she said as she was left up in one fast pull. Feeling better now? John asked. She nodded. Mirren came closer to her and pushed John away. Love, it's okay at the moment. You can rest if you want, he said. She smiled at him, feeling the warmth of his words. I am starving. Let's eat together, she said. Losing a family member makes some cherish the rest of the family they have. Isha was that kind of person. She joined in and laughed at the little Bothia as she kept stuck to John, watching what he was doing with the light screen in full interest. Hey, midget, what's with you and John? She spoke. Hearing her, little Bothia put back her haughty face. I am the prophetess, he is the champion. We should exchange guidance from time to time. Finally, that I personally met him rather than just doing divinations all day. Bothia said. You scribe out John all day? Isha put a weird face. Indeed, I have seen him doing many amazing stuff. Punching people with thunder, riding firebirds, jumping from the sky, and a lot more. Little Bothia was excited, talking about everything she knew about John from her divinations. John gave a helpless smile, not knowing how to deal with such a kid. So you're watching everything, huh? Isha thought, but I think that in John's life, some parts a child shouldn't watch, you know? What parts? Bothia tilted her head. Isha smiled slyly and looked at John. Don't worry, sister. I have a wife who can do divinations too. I learned a trick that involves greed to keep me off their grid. John made a thumbs up. Isha and Mirren laughed hard to that. What is it? I don't understand. Little Bothia kept nagging John to tell her. As he kept a tight lip, she turned to Isha with a pouting face. You are just jealous I know so much about him, she said. Isha smiled at the brat and replied, Why would I be? I have my honeyboo right here. Bulky guys like John are not my type, she said while pulling Mirren closer. The one who should be jealous is Miranda, by the way. As she pointed at Miranda, everyone looked at the Altmare blonde who was abnormally silent even for the silent her. Mira, Nern to Miranda, over. John called. She seemed to have recovered from some overthinking. Everything is all right up there, astronaut? He asked. What? She replied, not following up with anything. The rest couldn't help but laugh at her. Hey, what's wrong? Isha asked. Miranda seemed uncomfortable and hesitant, but eventually she spoke. Something doesn't add up in the story we just heard, she said. The air tensed all of a sudden. Mirren gave her a meaningful look that hints, not now. What is it? Isha asked. What doesn't add up? Miranda felt some guilt bringing up that matter. Before she passes away, Isha was in a sorry state of overflowing emotions, but she turned very bright when she just woke up. It is best not to say anything, but it felt important. What I don't feel good about is that woman called Delilah. She went to such lengths making a curse and organizing everything, but what I don't understand is how Isha's labors are related to that, she said. Now that she said that, it made sense. She could just trick Isha like everyone in the Citadel, right? Why send her on a fool's errand when she was just a devastated sister, nothing more? Miranda's question took things from a whole different perspective. Not what happened, but why it happened. There was only one person to answer that. Little Bothia, who was clinging to John. She felt the gazes on her, so she sat down beside John. I was going to get to that later, but looks like I can't avoid now. Fine, she said. The others listened carefully as she raised 3 fingers. You have only asked one question while you should have asked 3. These are, why Isha? Why kill me? And why the spear of bitter mercy? To answer that, I must mention that the woman called Dalila has managed to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. First, Isha had to be disposed of. Kidnapping or killing her were available options, but necromancers know very well how tricky can souls be, especially the ones with a blood bond like Isha and her brother. Isha's soul might have reacted and emerged as a ghost to warn the people if she was killed, or her brother's soul would have reacted violently if she was in distress. The labors were perfect tool to just make her walk away. Second, the reason why I was killed was not just to force Isha into labors, but to prevent me from seeing something. As you know, I am powerful when it comes to divinations, maybe the best out there, only second to the red-eyed Queen of Winterhold. However, that period I died in is a blind period to me. Until a certain time, that vision was blocked from me. That was the very period they took Zane out of the grave and sat him out. That's why Dalila had me killed on Isha's hand. Lastly, and the most important thing, is that spear, the spear of bitter mercy. A powerful Daedric weapon of Herson that no one can get rid of or seal. It was the best action to send that weapon away with Isha. After all, it is the only weapon out there that can threaten him. The only weapon that can kill Zane. PayPal for gifts. PayPal. me/Eldokmeezy. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7S. Chapter 469. The Siege of Strozmkai 1. On P4TRE0N. Big thanks and welcome to our new patron at Olio Tamarin. Away from Saintsport Village, a band of necromancers made camp outside the dwarven ruins of Bzark. The ruins have a wide brass wall that separated the southwestern part of the island from the southeastern part where Saintsport is. That band of necromancers was in the middle of an argument after the late accidents that kept happening this day. All the units spread around the southeast of Strozmkai went off the grid, and the village of Saintsport seemed to not have fallen yet. By the Worm King, don't tell me all those fools decided to party and drink all in the same day. A worm warlock spoke as he was trying to see anything from the top of the brass wall. Don't bother. The best thing these lowlives can do is to die and feed the soul snare. A worm knight dismissed the other's worries. We still can't eliminate the possibility of any movements from the governor of Port Hunding, a worm agent suggested. The governor? No, our man on the inside has the governor handled. The Hunding Chargers won't cross the bay and keep defending the north where the governor resides. The worm knight dismissed it. I don't want to be pessimistic, but something doesn't feel right. The worm agent couldn't help but keep staring at the Badlands to the east. Strozmkai is a vast island with a big population. The native Redguards herd their cattle all around the island, and so many villages were raided by the worm cult for the sake of harvesting souls. Still, the big cities are the cult's target, for there are millions of lives to harvest in there and around all Hammerfell. No major city has fallen yet. Whoever brings down the first city will gain a lot of praise from the leaders of the cult, as well as many benefits and rewards. Should Port Hunding fall to the plan the cult leaders in Strozmkai planning on, things would go nicely for this branch of the cult. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Suddenly on the brass wall, footsteps were heard coming loud and clear. The 3 cult officers turned around to see another one of them walking to the gathering spot. Hail, comrades, he spoke. Denning, come join us. The Worm Knight stood up, greeting his friend. Denning walked closer to the 3, showing a friendly attitude. How was your mission? Did you finally bring down Saintsport? The knight asked. Easy. We are now chasing the locals, and by tomorrow, they will fight for the dead. Denning said. And why didn't you contact us? The worm agent asked with doubt in his eyes. You know how cornered dogs fight. They gave me some unnecessary trouble. Denning said as he picked a liquor bottle that was between the other 3. Wasn't the saying about cornered cat? The worm knight asked. Idiot. Have you ever seen a cat get cornered? Denning replied in threatening tone. The others laughed at the prank Denning just came up with. So, the plans will finally be successful at this rate. Cheers. The warlock said. Tell me about those plans. Denning asked as he patted the warlock's shoulder. We made plans to attack Port Hunding as the three elders commanded. First, we distract the governor's men by our activities in the north until we take down Saintsport and the ships in it. Once that is done, we will have access to the ships in Saintsport and make a covert trip through the Hunding Bay, then go wild once we reach the city port. Our spies keep the defenses light. The warlock spoke in detail. That's a nice plan, Denning said. The Worm Knight and the Worm Agent looked at each other, feeling strange about the Worm Warlock talking this much about the plans. Denning is one of them after all, so he shouldn't be asking. The Worm Warlock also felt a bit strange for speaking this, much as if his tongue was sat loose. Feels nice, isn't it? Denning asked. Talking your heart out? Yes, haha. Ha ha ha. Denning and the warlock laughed, then turned to the knight and the agent. You two, set and drink. Ha ha ha. Denning was friendlier than ever and invited the two as he simply poked them with his hand. The two loosened up and laughed too. Ha ha. Yes, let's drink. Ha ha. All right. The knight, the agent, and the warlock felt all their tension go away as soon as they sat down to drink. Their heads rolled down onto the floor. Denning was looking at them as he wielded a jet black sword. Well done. You have become better at this. Bring me more. More souls to nourish the blade. More souls to win my favor. All right. I'll kill more. Denning transformed into his true identity, which is John. The real Denning was, of course, very dead, and John made sure to trap his soul into a black soul gem just in case. He did his favorite game of going in hostile places with a familiar face, then murder all the persons of interest in that place. It would surely nourish the ebony blade and make Mephala pleased. The ebony blade, Daedric, awakening 8 out of 10. Absorb vitality, fortify swordsmanship. The awakening finally went up a rank. John checked the blade's edge and couldn't help but let out a laugh. Damn, this thing is insane, he said. Maybe the ebony blade wasn't his favorite weapon in the game, but in reality, this artifact is broken. John could feel how dangerous the blade has become now that has reached this point. It is indestructible, extremely sharp, and no one can use it like him. The blade has a will to its own and causes its users to go insane if they have weaker wills. John's tyrannical aura helped him to dominate the blade, not the other way around. Right now, if a normal person took the handle of this blade, their minds will be possessed by bloodlust and go on a killing spree. Also, the absorb vitality enchantment was superior now the awakening reached past the 8/10ths threshold. A cut from the blade won't be healed that easily and will cause a bleeding effect if it hits a blood vessel. The fortify swordsmanship enchantment was now on a new realm. This enchantment was the important one in John's eye. He would train with the sword every day for at least 2 hours to sync up with the blade's skill, then go for another 2 hours on a training sword to keep up with the skill. Actually, the best way to control the ebony blade without being controlled by it is keeping up with its skill or being superior. In truth, John's own skill without the ebony blade is very close to the skill with the blade. 8 paces from 10 to perfection. John is talented in whatever he does, but he is a talent who works hard. His insane swordsmanship and his perfect sword will prove to be of important use during the end of the labor, but the only one who could see that was little Bothia, who was standing not too far away from the brass wall. John walked to the edge and gave a telepathic signal for the others to come. Mirren and Miranda showed up out of nowhere. Isha walked to the brass wall from a place where some sentries started falling dead. Bothia was lifted up by Jax as he conjured bound flame wings and flew to the wall. Nefertiti came from the shadows and appeared on John's shoulder. We should give this cool group a name, John thought. Totally, Mirren agreed. Right now, we have an undead horde to take care of. Isha pointed to the other side of the wall. With another horde, Miranda looked back to the direction they came from. The Bone Colossus samurai, Wrath, marched forward followed by all manners of undead. He went on a rampage for the whole day, conquering the worm cells scattered around Saintsport and made an army of 500 undead for his master. He walked with a bone katana in hand while eating a big skull he came across. Lately, Wrath was developing a habit of eating bones and making weapons out of bone rather than using the ones John provided. This new way meant that he is evolving once again. The brass wall had 2 gates locked by the necromancers, so John had them open as soon as his army arrived. Beyond them, the worm cult had made an army of the dead and a camp for their ranks. They didn't know what was coming as Mirren, Miranda, and Isha took care of all the sentries. Kill. John gave the order and Wrath reacted. Howl. As a brass gate was opening, the howl of Wrath hurled towards it, pushing the 2 doors aside and crashing into the undead horde behind it. By the next second, Wrath and his legion were swarming in a wave of chaos. Master, should I join in? Jax asked.
No.
John refused. Go to Port Hunting City. If you find anything happening there, report to me.
Yes.
Jax spread the bound flame wings and took the sky. Wow. Jax became so strong ever since he became your apprentice. Bothia held to John's arm and started jumping. Annoying. Nefertiti looked at her from above John's shoulder, then looked away. Okay. Don't start a fuss right now. John shook off Bothia and turned to his team. You go ahead. Bring whatever you can find. I'll stay here with the brat and manage the fight. The 3 nodded and jumped into the fray, seeking out the necromancers at the end of the enemy camp. John took out his light screen and turned on the Eagle Vision mode to monitor his troops, then started giving out commands. Miranda, a worm sending a distress signal, 76 meters, 2 o'clock. Target down. Isha, there is some big-ass flesh Atronak, 195 meters, 7 o'clock. Vaughn it. Wrath, you're running low on numbers. Convert some fresh undead. Maeras, noisy bastard. Pride, conjure reinforcements. And that's how he started fighting. For some reason, his old gaming ghost managed to make a strategy game out of this situation. Before dawn, the whole force of the worm cult to the south of Strozmkai was annihilated. Now, teach me. Please. But little Bothia was still excited, begging to learn from John. On the other side of the island, Jax arrived on the western wall of the city of Port Hunting. The western battlement of the city was crowded with defenders, as they seemed to have just gotten rid of an undead raid. Jax used his flame-bound wings to glide over the city and arrived near a tower where he hid himself from view because his wings were really visible. Also, no one will stay still after watching a flying cow with fire wings around. Speaking of the wings, it was something that he always fancied, as it seemed that Morihaus Brethufkine, father of all minotaurs, was a man-bull with wings in the culture of minotaurs. Of course, this spell was created by consulting John, who is Jax's mentor. John mixed up some of the spells Johnrad used and taught them to Jax, who was an enthusiastic pyromancer. This, Bound Flame Wings, was a variation of many archetypes, but after testing, John decided it is best to make a spell that adds power to the normal levitation spell, which was Bound Wings, and tweaked it with a flame effect, creating Bound Flame Wings. Jax took pride in this spell that he created with the help of his mentor and devoted himself to the path of combat and pyromancy. Back to the present, Jax kept watching the situation in Port Hunting from afar. A young man stood on the wall, blowing in his palms and rubbing them from the cold weather. My lord, the scouts have returned. The undead are an hour away from the wall. An officer came running for the young man. Good job. Are the pitch traps ready? The young man asked his officer. Yes, my lord. And the mages? They are running low on magicka, but the alchemists are providing them with potions. Then we just need to endure it, the young man said, and returned to the watch. He was the governor of Port Hunting, Lord Kareem. 19 years of age, the young lord was the only reason why Port Hunting stood strong till now. He led the men, organized the refugees, and spread his fleet to resupply from the mainland and the empire. He was a fair and popular governor, but he had a hard time dealing with the insides. What worried him now was the undercurrents in Port Hunting more than the undead. And here it comes. Lord Kareem, you are still up on the battlements? How praiseworthy! The late lord must be proud of you in far shores. A voice came from the back as a fleshy man walked up to him. This walking mound of fat was his vizier, Zayed. Unlike Karim, who is from the Crowns, Zayed is from the Forebears. The two factions were always at odds ever since the founding of Hammerfell, but the situation in Strozmkai was different. Both the Forebears and the Crowns shared the power in this historical city, with the Crowns as governors and the Forebears as ministers. Karim looked at Zayed, doubting his appearance on the battlement to be of any good. Zayed is corrupt and known to be filthy rich, while Karim was a warrior with a proud heritage and a noble bloodline that goes back to Azara, sister of Cyrus, hero of Strozmkai. What is it, Lord Zayed? Karim asked. Hee, my lord, I think you are really taking this matter seriously. Monopolizing the food of the granaries and the organized distribution is harming merchants like me. If you want to help the city, you just need to kick these refugees out, Zayed said. Are you seriously asking me to abandon my people, Zayed? Karim turned angry and dropped the honorifics all of a sudden. Zayed was displeased by the sharp reply, but he still had to act his rule. Then, my lord, you need to face them with the hunting chargers, the vizier said as an innocent suggestion. Not the chargers. Karim made a firm refusal. The hunting chargers are the cavalry force of Strozmkai, best known for their unrivaled attack. These were the elites that the House of Karim nurtured for years. Using them against the undead horde is suicide. Then, my lord, if there is no reason to assure the rich of Port Hunting to stay, I'm afraid every family has a ship they are willing to get on and leave. That includes the Hamad family. Karim was about to hold his sword and kill that bastard, but he barely held it. Zayed has a lot of influence and knows how to bargain. He can manipulate the opinions of many families, and that includes the Hamads. To Karim, the Hamads were his lover's family. He was not engaged yet, as he spent many years studying at the University of Sentinel and only returned when his father died. He met Fatin, daughter of the Hamad family, but he still didn't arrange the engagement. Somehow, Zayed was aware of this relationship. Give me a day to decide. Karim could only say so and return to the watch. You don't have a day, my lord. Still, Zayed stopped him. What do you mean? Karim asked with a bothered face. Nothing. I'll see you later, my lord. Zayed seemed to have magically changed his mind and turned around to leave. Karim narrowed his eyes, not understanding what this fox was plotting. On the other hand, Zayed's face has twisted into a cruel grin as he reached the end of the stairs down the city walls. His servant came to him running, and Zayed spoke quietly. That bastard has already run out of time. Notify the others, he said. Later by a minute, an ominous feeling struck the city. Looking far to the west, something monstrous appeared. A walking 7 meters of flesh and skin attached to each other. Its smell reached a mile, and its dread made Strozmkai shake with every step it took. A gigantic flesh Atronak. PayPal for gifts. PayPal. me/Eldokmezi. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7S. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.